The sincerity demonstrated by the Central Plains side could not be called anything but profound. This immense sincerity moved even the lofty Asura emperors, causing slight changes in their expressions. It seemed that the Central Plains sages had come with true resolve to secure eternal peace for future generations, staking everything on this one decisive campaign. A warm spring breeze smile slowly spread across the majestic face of the Nine Hells Asura Emperor. The Central Plains is so sincere. How could this emperor refuse such a tremendous goodwill? May our two sides henceforth forge lasting peace, never invade each other, and share in this prosperous era. Hand the sundial over to this emperor, and you may depart on your own. His words still echoed in the air when the Tiandu sage raised his hand without hesitation, and the sundial in his palm instantly turned into a stream of light thrown high into the air. But just as the sundial was about to leave his hand, a figure darted over like a phantom, teleporting in a flash and clutching it tightly in his palm. It was Fang Chen. At this, the powerhouses of both factions were stunned, disbelief written all over their faces. At this critical, hair-trigger moment, Fang Chen's near-provocative reckless act was nothing short of playing with fire. The Tiandu sage frowned deeply, looking at Fang Chen with incomprehension. Starfire Venerable, what is the meaning of this? Fang Chen remained expressionless, calmly spreading his palm and returning the sundial to Tiandu sage, saying indifferently, since it is your life, saving trump card, keep it well. Keep it in your own hands for survival. He paused, then added in a seemingly casual but bone-chilling tone, don't let a few words easily trick it away from you. Trick. That single word was like a stone stirred into 1,000-layer wave. The expressions of the Central Plains sages changed drastically, their eyes instantly filled with alertness and wariness. The 9 Netherworld Demon Lord's pupils contracted, his eyes narrowing as he stared at Fang Chen, demanding in a deep voice, boy, just what do you mean by that? Fang Chen's face was covered in frost as he coldly said, his wife and children are all captives of our Central Plains, their lives hanging by a thread. Yet he doesn't ask about them at all, even urging us to leave on our own. Do you all think that's possible? Goom! These words struck like a thunderbolt in everyone's minds. Only then did they abruptly recall that the 9 Hells Asura Emperor's own flesh and blood were all under the control of the Central Plains. Yet, from beginning to end, he hadn't mentioned a single word about them. Why? The answer was already obvious. Because from the very start, he never intended to let any Central Plains person leave alive. All he did was merely a ploy to trick the sundial from Tiandu sage's hands without bloodshed. Everyone turned their gazes toward the 9 Hells Asura Emperor, their hearts trembling violently. They saw that the warm smile on his face from moments ago had vanished without a trace, no one knew when. In its place was a creeping, bone-chilling coldness. His frigid gaze slowly settled on Fang Chen, his voice dripping with lethal intent. You reacted quite quickly. Originally, this emperor intended to kill you first. How could he not sense that the auras of his wives and children were lingering on Fang Chen right now? He had merely been holding back all along. Just then, the void erupted with unending sharp howls, as if countless blades were tearing through the air. It was the intangible pressure. The 9 Netherworld Demon Lord and ancient Zen Buddha Lords' faces tightened, and they flashed forward, shielding Fang Chen behind them like 2 iron towers, jointly resisting the 9 Hells Asura Emperor's oppressive, killing gaze. The 9 Netherworld Demon Lord bellowed, you never planned to let us leave, did you? Thinking back to just moments before, the 9 Hells Asura Emperor had put on a helpless act, claiming to be coerced by the Central Emperor and forced to kill them. Now it seemed that was merely a play, performed for the Grand Libationer from beyond the heavens, all to lessen the animosity between the 2 worlds. The 9 Hells Asura Emperor clasped his hands behind his back, his supreme aura like a waking volcano, rising steadily. His gaze turned utterly icy. The southern heavenly realm alone cannot withstand the terrifying impact of the dark tide. What I need is both the southern heavenly realm and the Central Plains, 2 worlds. At these words, everyone present was deeply shaken, gasping sharply. What an ambitious 9 Hells Asura Emperor! Not content with dominating the southern heavenly realm, he actually dares to covet the Central Plains. And to seize the Central Plains, these Central Plains sages before him must be utterly eradicated. So, from the very start, he never intended to let a single person present live. If not for Fang Chen exposing the scheme in time, not only would they have died, but they would have personally handed over the precious time treasure that counters the Central Emperor right before their deaths. The Tiandu sage broke out in a cold sweat, decisively stowed the sundial in his storage device, clutched it tightly, and shouted fiercely, "Let us leave safely, and the sundial will be offered. Otherwise, you'll get nothing at all." The Nine Hells Asura Emperor's aura not only didn't diminish, but grew even more violent. He replied coldly, "No need. This emperor has his own ways to deal with him. Now, this emperor will first annihilate you all." Before his words finished, his razor, sharp gaze instantly locked onto Fang Chen. With a single burst of aura, he blasted the joint blockade of the 9 Netherworld Demon Lord and ancient Zen Buddha Lord into smithereens. Fang Chen instantly felt a tearing agony sweep through his body, as if about to explode. Gritting his teeth, he let out a low roar. "Great Dream Demon Lord, don't you want your son anymore?" In an instant, the world turned dark and gloomy. Like thick, impenetrable morning fog, it suddenly shrouded the entire world, making vision hazy. Before Fang Chen, a colossal demon insect, hidden in the mist with its massive form flickering in and out of sight, descended from nowhere. It emanated the ultimate aura of the Peak 3 Calamities realm. Its appearance, like a heavenly chasm, blocked the Nine Hells Asura Emperor's destructive killing intent, causing his eyes to widen abruptly, the great dream demon lord of the ancient demon realm. His heart surged with monstrous waves. This peak power at the 3 Calamities realm had actually meddled in the conflict between the central planes and the southern heavenly realm. The great dream demon lord, hidden in the mist, spoke with a voice utterly indifferent. "You killing others I can ignore, but don't touch this boy." Hearing this, the Nine Hells Asura Emperor's taut heartstrings relaxed slightly for a moment. If it was only this, then the situation wasn't the worst. He turned his gaze back to Fang Chen with a cold snort. "I underestimated you, able to call upon a 3 Calamities realm expert to escort you." His tone suddenly shifted, killing intent revealed. "But I kill others, and you won't be able to save them." At that, Fang Chen flipped his hand and took out the spatial mirror, retorting without backing down. "I kill them, and you won't be able to save them either." As he spoke, he carefully took out a strand of hair and pressed it tightly onto the mirror's surface. This hair came from Kiki, containing a terrifying law of death. A single strike could easily annihilate a sage of the 1st Calamity realm. The Asura Empress's family in the mirror, none could survive under this law. The Nine Hells Asura Emperor's eyes nearly split, his sharp gaze seeming to pierce the void. "You dare." Fang Chen was utterly fearless, raising his head to stare back. "You're about to annihilate our Central Plains sages. What do I have to fear?" The two sides, separated by a stretch of void, coldly stared each other down. Each grasped the other's vital handle. For a while, neither could gain the upper hand, and the scene fell into a deathly stalemate. In the distance, the Cloud Crane rogue sage was full of frustration, slapping his thigh and saying bitterly, "Damned, this little beast still hides such a vicious trump card." Now even the Nine Hells Asura Emperor is constrained by him. Beside him, the Blue Sky rogue sage subconsciously rubbed the hilt of his sword with his fingers. On his aged face hidden beneath the black robe, a meaningful, sinister look surfaced. An ambitious hero who seeks to dominate the two worlds, would he truly be fettered by so-called family bonds? "All under my command, stay on alert. As expected, the final battle is about to come." The Central Plains army, too, had sweaty palms and restless hearts at this moment. Could Fang Chen's final trump card truly intimidate this cold-blooded Nine Hells Asura Emperor? Their gazes clashed across the void, barely a few breaths. Yet it felt as interminable as 10,000 years. At last, the Nine Hells Asura Emperor was the first to ease the overwhelming pressure around him. A trace of dejection flickered across his face, and he heaved a long sigh. "Fine. All of you may leave. Just leave my wife and children here." However, the sages from the Middle Earth dared not trust him so easily now. Instead of retreating immediately, they simultaneously summoned their towering divine monuments of merit. Brilliant chains of law swirled protectively around them as they stood ready for battle. Fang Chen tightened his grip on the strand of death and the spatial mirror in his hands, shouting coldly, "Your words are no longer trustworthy. Withdraw beyond the heavens, and let our Grand Libationer personally oversee your every move. Only then will I consider releasing your wife and children." The Nine Hells Asura Emperor listened, yet it was as if he hadn't heard a word. He remained rooted to the spot, unmoving. It was just that the dejected look on his face, so evident moments before, was gradually being overtaken once more by malice and ferocity. Alarm bells rang in the hearts of the Middle Earth powerhouses, and they instinctively drew closer together. The Nine Nether Demon Sovereign, his expression extremely grim, shouted, "Everyone, prepare to strike together. Even if we can't kill him, we'll make him pay in flesh." Fang Chen's heart leaped into his throat, and he roared out his urging, "Withdraw beyond the heavens, now, at once." The Nine Hells Asura Emperor dropped all pretense at last. The recently subdued, supreme aura erupted violently, like a volcano silent for millennia finally blowing its top. His icy gaze, brimming with boundless murderous intent, shot toward Fang Chen like a lethal arrow. "This emperor shall simply consider them already dead. And as for you, open your eyes wide and watch. Watch how this emperor slaughters you Middle-earth sages, cutting you down to the last man, leaving not a single one alive." Fang Chen's heart hammered wildly in his chest, but he forced himself to remain calm. He still possessed his final, ultimate trump card, unused. His consciousness instantly sank into the spatial mirror, where the Asura Empress and her three companions wore varied expressions. The outside world could not see into the mirror, but those inside could observe everything happening outside with perfect clarity. Thus, the four of them witnessed, with undeniable clarity, the moment the Nine Hells Asura Emperor abandoned them as discarded pawns without a shred of hesitation. The Asura Empress's expression was slightly complicated, yet she showed no surprise. After sharing a bed for countless years, she understood better than anyone exactly what kind of man her husband was. Tian Qin, on the other hand, was overcome with grief and despair, leaning her head sorrowfully against the Asura Empress's shoulder. As for Tian Jian and Tian Ji, their faces remained utterly expressionless, cold, blooded to an infuriating degree. Their only concern was the fear Fang Chen had instilled in them. Fang Chen didn't waste time with idle talk, nor did he immediately execute a killing blow. He yanked Tian Ji out and interrogated her harshly. "Your father's name, speak." As he pressed for an answer, Fang Chen secretly produced the heart-reflecting ancient mirror, its surface soundlessly reflecting Tian Ji. It was imperative to ensure she said exactly what she meant in her heart. They had long agreed that Tian Ji would disclose his true name only when they met the Nine Hells Asura Emperor in person. That moment had arrived. The instant Tian Ji appeared, she answered without the slightest hesitation, "Dongfang Xingyan." What came from her mouth matched exactly the name that surfaced in her mind. There was no doubt this was the true name of the Nine Hells Asura Emperor. A gleam of light flashed in Fang Chen's eyes. Without delay, he retrieved the primal imprisoning gourd and instantly activated it. Holding the divine gourd, he aimed it at the Nine Hells Asura Emperor, who had yet to deliver his fatal strike, and bellowed a voice like spring thunder, "Dongfang Xingyan." However, the moment he triggered the gourd, Fang Chen sensed something was terribly wrong. Logically, once the target's true name was called, the primal imprisoning gourd should immediately shoot out a scarlet chain of law to bind the opponent tightly. Then, with just another command of receive, the target would be sucked into the gourd. But now, after he had shouted the name Dongfang Xingyan, the distant Nine Hells Asura Emperor showed absolutely no reaction. The name was a fake? How could Tianji possibly have managed this? How could she have deceived the heart, reflecting ancient mirrors soul-probing, and fabricated a false name on the spot? This was utterly inconceivable. An intense shock and a deep sense of crisis surged through him, yet Fang Chen's reaction was extraordinarily swift. The instant he realized he had been deceived, he didn't utter a single word. Murderous intent exploded in his eyes, and a soul attack imbued with the power of destruction blasted fiercely toward Tianji beside him. Fang Chen's pupils abruptly constricted. He could hardly believe his eyes. In Tianji's hand there was also a pitch, black crystal rod. Its surface was densely engraved with countless strange eyes, large and small. This was unmistakably the Dark Asura clan's realm weapon, the Eye of Hell. But shouldn't this item be in Fang Chen's possession? How could Tianji have a second one? Even more alarming to Fang Chen was that Tianji had completely shed her usual cowardly and timid demeanor. The corners of her mouth slowly curved upward, sketching the arc of a faint, knowing smile. Within her beautiful eyes swirled a terrifyingly profound depth. With a sudden, violent clench of her 5 fingers, the Eye of Hell in her palm was instantly activated. An overwhelming and incomparable might of a realm weapon surged forth like a capsizing tsunami, sweeping out in a devastating blast. It must be remembered that back then, the residual soul of St. Tongyuan had only managed, with his full power, to unleash a mere tenth of this realm weapon's power. Yet now, in the hands of Tianji, an ordinary Asura, it unleashed an equally horrifying might. Not even Fang Chen, nor the great dream demon sovereign standing right beside him, could escape its reach. In that instant, Fang Chen felt his mind go completely blank, his consciousness stripped from his body in a flash. Fortunately, the primordial void ancient tree radiated a clear, protective light in time, cleansing the realm weapon's corrosive influence. Even so, that split, second lapse of awareness provided Tianji with the perfect opening. When Fang Chen's consciousness returned to his body, he was horrified to discover that Tianji had already seized a firm grip on his primal imprisoning gourd. Tianji was also startled to see Fang Chen awaken earlier than expected. She immediately turned her head and cried out in desperation, "Father, how could a figure like the Nine Hells Asura Emperor let such a heaven-sent opportunity slip by?" Seizing the instant that the great dream demon sovereign was similarly affected, he struck with ruthless decisiveness. From the slowly rotating vortex above his head, countless threads of karmic causality suddenly spewed forth. Exuding an aura of ominous malice, these threads snaked madly toward the great dream demon sovereign and Fang Chen like venomous serpents. Once struck, both men would instantly be reduced to mere puppets. A harsh, tearing sound ripped through the air, and the great dream demon sovereign was instantly entangled. He jolted awake at that very moment, an uncontrollable expression of terror spreading across his face. In this critical juncture, without a second thought, he spat out a dense cloud of blood mist. The blood mist expanded rapidly, transforming the surrounding fog into a churning sea of blood in the blink of an eye. The karmic causality threads wrapped around him were incinerated in large part by the mist imbued with his primal essence. But a few stubborn strands, like bone, gnawing parasites, burrowed viciously into his body and began madly devouring his consciousness. Alarm bells clanged wildly in the great dream demon sovereign's mind. With his soul no longer under his own command, how could he possibly continue to fight the Nine Hells Asura Emperor? Proving his ruthless and decisive nature, this formidable overlord abandoned the battle without a shred of reluctance. With a direct teleport, he tore through the surrounding world's barrier and fled straight into the void beyond. As for protecting Fang Chen, at this moment he couldn't even spare a thought for his own son, the great Hun Sage, let alone care about whether Fang Chen lived or died. With him gone, the remaining karmic causality threads met no further resistance and instantly bound Fang Chen up tightly, layer upon layer. Seizing this opportunity, Tianji violently snatched the primal imprisoning gourd right out of Fang Chen's grasp. A long, suppressed ecstasy finally erupted on her face, and she howled with manic laughter, "Ha ha ha ha, it's finally in my hands." Even the Nine Hells Asura Emperor's imposing face couldn't help but reveal a trace of approving amusement. He declared proudly, "Truly, a daughter I personally molded. She does not disappoint. Your performance this time was outstanding." Of his 3 children, only Tianjian and Tianji had been raised personally by his side, meticulously nurtured. Tianqin's nature was far too gentle. He had always disliked that, so he simply left her in the care of their wife. And indeed, both in the past and now, Tianjian and Tianji's performance had always far surpassed Tianqin's, never once letting him down. Tianji let out a silvery giggle, shaking the Hell's Eye in her palm with a gesture of claiming credit. She said proudly, "Father, everyone under heaven has been fooled by our father-daughter duo. They have no idea that our Dark Asura clan actually forged 2 Hell's Eyes. One came from the late Dark Asura Saint of Hell Realm, who sent the Hell's Eye across realms to our heavenly Dark Asura clan just before death. The other is a brand, new realm artifact personally forged by our new generation's Dark Asura Saint in Heaven Realm. That remnant soul of the Tongyuan Asura Saint thought he could trick me into stealing the Hell's Eye, and then using me to seize the remains of the primordial ancient saint. He never realized that while the mantis stalks the cicada, the oriole lies in wait behind, did he?" Fang Chen stared fixedly at the Tianji before him, feeling she was utterly unfamiliar. At this moment, Tianji was full of shrewd calculations. Her entire being exuded a sinister, cunning, and venomous aura, her depth of scheming far surpassing her eldest brother, Tianjian. Was this really the same Tianji as the timid, death-fearing wretch she had always appeared to be? But as soon as the thought surfaced, Fang Chen instantly understood. How could a truly cowardly and fragile woman have endured 3 whole months in the White Horse Temple's dungeon? How could a brainless fool so easily turn a portion of the Asura in taking great prefecture to her own command? All the submissive obedience and fear of death she had displayed before him were meticulously crafted disguises. This Tianji, standing before him now, with all her sharpness fully revealed, she was the real one. Tianji looked at Fang Chen, her smiling eyes brimming with the satisfaction of revenge served. She asked mockingly, "What, don't recognize me anymore, Starfire Venerable? Never expected you'd ultimately fall into the hands of the most inconspicuous me, did you?" Among the Asura Empress's group, it was indeed she who seemed the most fragile, the least guarded against, the easiest to manipulate. But who would have known? She was the one hiding deepest, the most dangerous of all. Fang Chen's gaze darkened as it swept over the second Hell's Eye in her hand. He asked in a cold voice, "You knew all along that the Tongyuan Realm Lord would seize your Hell's Eye?" Tianji imitated Fang Chen's usual unflappable manner and shrugged playfully. She chuckled lightly, of course. A mere little trick to deceive the mind, and you thought it could fool me. I simply turned his own scheme against him and followed him to the Middle Land. Once he used the Hell's Eye to control the primordial ancient saint's body, I would use this brand new Hell's Eye, personally activated by Father, to turn the tables and control him instead. In this way, that priceless saint's body would naturally fall into the hands of our dark Asura clan. After hearing this, Fang Chen actually smiled slowly. He had originally thought that the Tongyuan Realm Lord had taken advantage of the naive, sweet Tianji. Never did he imagine that Tianji had been toying with the other party the entire time. If not for his previous request for the other shore realm, Lord's avatar, to descend and capture the Tongyuan Realm Lord back to Hell Realm, Tianji's sinister plan would likely have already succeeded. You are truly insidious. Fang Chen looked deeply at Tianji. Upon hearing this, Tianji's beautiful eyes immediately curved into crescent moons as she smiled. Completely unfazed, she giggled. Hee hee, you flatter me. I originally intended to strike directly at you. But knowing you would lead the Middle Land Army to counterattack the Heavenly Realm, I once again turned your plan to my advantage. I thought, perhaps at a critical moment, I could produce an unexpected, miraculous effect. And the result, as expected, did not disappoint. Fang Chen slowly closed his eyes, saying no more, as if completely resigned to fate. At this point, things had likely surpassed everyone's expectations. The sages of the Middle Land now wore solemn expressions, their eyes filled with boundless despair. That last, slim chance to turn the tables had been utterly ruined by Tianji's hand. Even Fang Chen, who was known for his flawless calculations, seemed to have fallen into despairing silence. However, in this deathly stillness, there was one person who seemed lost in thought. That person was the pavilion master of Fang Mountain, first-class pavilion. Knowing Fang Chen as he did, unless this man died and his Tao dissipated, he would never resign himself to capture. Could it be that Fang Chen was still brewing some hidden trump? The corner of his eye inadvertently swept over the primordial heaven. Imprisoning gourd in Tianji's palm, his heart jolted, and he instantly understood. The secret must lie in that gourd. Fang Chen must have already tampered with the gourd as a precaution. Tianji had been suppressed by Fang Chen for far too long and had suffered far too much. Now that the tables had turned and she was triumphant, she couldn't wait to vent all her pent-up resentment before Fang Chen. She tilted her head and asked smugly, "By the way, aren't you curious how I deceived your mind-reading technique?" Only then did Fang Chen half open his eyes again. Deep within his pupils faintly flickered a shifting soul light. This was unmistakably the sign before activating the soul transference art. Exactly. The moment Fang Chen realized Tianji was deceiving him, he had decisively prepared a contingency on the primordial heaven, imprisoning gourd. Within that gourd remained a wisp of his soul imprint. And now Tianji was tightly gripping the primordial heaven, imprisoning gourd in intimate contact with his soul. This precisely fulfilled the harsh conditions for activating the soul transference art. With just a single thought, his and Tianji's souls could be swapped in an instant. At that moment, possessing Tianji's Asura body, he could directly activate the primordial heaven, imprisoning gourd. The only remaining issue was the true name of the Nine Hells Asura Emperor. Looking at the extremely smug Tianji before him, Fang Chen deliberately darkened his expression and said coldly, "Do you even need to ask? To deceive another's mind, probing, one must first deceive oneself. You must have personally erased your memories of your father's name, then casually picked a false name and repeatedly reinforced that memory within yourself. Only in this way could you completely fool an outsider like me." Tianji smiled as she took out an ancient bone fragment from her bosom and waved it in her hand. Within that bone fragment were clearly engraved exquisite soul laws. In the vast southern heaven realm, the only person to ever master the laws of the soul was one, the Cloud Crane inferior sage. When Tianji descended to the lower realm, she even carried such a life-preserving item. The depth of her scheming and the thoroughness of her preparation were obvious. "You're as clever as ever, right on the mark." Tianji smiled until her eyes became a faint crescent moon. Fang Chen let out a long sigh, his tone filled with weary resignation. He said slowly, "I knew it would be like this, so now you must have fully recovered your memories." Tianji said as if it were only natural, "Of course. The moment I saw father, I naturally recalled his true name again." Saying this, she giggled like a victorious little girl. "Want to know my father's true name? The key point of your defeat lies right in my father's name. Dying so mysteriously, you must be very unwilling, right?" Fang Chen's heart stirred slightly. He hadn't expected the answer to come so easily. However, at this moment, the Nine Hells Asura Emperor interrupted sharply with alarm. He said in a low voice, enough playing around, "This emperor will send him on his way. This man's methods reach the heavens, and his magic treasures are bizarre and unfathomable. We must not keep him alive, lest delays bring trouble." The Nine Hells Asura Emperor said coldly, "First release your mother and your elder siblings, and confirm they bear no restrictions left by Fang Chen." Upon hearing this, Tianji nodded heavily and snatched the space mirror from Fang Chen's hand. With a thought from her, the demonic vines of the immortal, binding vines swiftly loosened, and the three, including the Asura Empress, who had been bound, instantly regained their freedom. "Father!" Tianjian's face burst with ecstasy. He leaped and rushed to the Nine Hells Asura Emperor's side. Tian Qin stood quietly beside the Asura Empress, gazing at the Nine Hells Asura Emperor with a complex look. The feeling of being abandoned by one's own father was truly unbearable. The Asura Empress gazed at Fang Chen, tightly bound by countless karmic threads, and a touch of reluctance appeared in her beautiful eyes. Her crimson lips parted slightly as she said tremblingly, "Husband, could we leave Fang Chen a path to survival? Even if it means letting him possess another body and start cultivation anew." The Nine Hells Asura Emperor's brows fiercely shot up, his voice terrifyingly deep. "Do you even know what you're saying?" His own wife, captured by Fang Chen for days, not only bears no resentment, but even pleads for him. Upon hearing this, Tianjian shot a fierce glare at the Asura Empress before stepping forward to tattle. "Father, when you have time, you should search Mother's soul. Thoroughly investigate what exactly happened between her and Fang Chen." During the time Mother was captured, she was often summoned alone by Fang Chen, and each time she returned happier than before.
"What?"
The face of the Nine Hells Asura Emperor darkened, almost dripping with malice. Such words any man would understand what they implied. A gaze that seemed to pierce the soul shot from his eyes, stabbing toward the Asura Empress. "Baeksu, I'll give you one chance to explain." The Asura Empress's face instantly revealed a guilty expression. Between her and Fang Chen, everything was innocent. Nothing had happened at all. Yet she couldn't and Fang Chen repeatedly acting ambiguously toward her, saying things like, "Madam, you wouldn't want your son and daughter to suffer, would you?" And even teeing a dog leash around her neck, making her crouch on the ground. And most recently, he actually carried her onto a bamboo mat and forcibly pressed her down to sleep. These matters she could explain, but would the Nine Hells Asura Emperor believe her? That guilt was written clearly on her face, almost as plain as day. Even outsiders could see it clearly, let alone the Nine Hells Asura Emperor, who was her bedfellow. Baeksu Fang Chen, his chest heaved with violent rage, his eyes nearly splitting open. He had never imagined that the empress of his own harem would betray him, and with a mere human deity transformation cultivator, no less. Hearing this, Empress Baeksu could only grit her teeth slightly and say with difficulty, "All I can tell you is that I have not wronged you." Her tone was not resolute, it sounded utterly lacking in confidence, and to the Nine Hells Asura Emperor's ears, it was nothing but a guilty quibble. This completely confirmed the humiliating suspicion in the Nine Hells Asura Emperor's heart. Killing intent flared violently in his eyes as he bellowed, "Fang Chen, I will not let you live." In front of many cultivators from the Central Earth and Southern Celestial Realm, it was exposed that his wife had an affair with the enemy. At this moment he had only one thought: tear Fang Chen to pieces, wipe away this monumental disgrace. With a thought, countless threads of karmic causality suddenly came alive, madly burrowing into Fang Chen's body. "Father, hold your hand." But Tianj let out a coquettish laugh at that moment. Killing him so simply wouldn't that be letting him off too lightly. Better to keep his life for now and torture him slowly. A flash of cruel amusement flickered in her eyes as she added, "Once we've tortured him enough, then let Mother personally kill him." Hearing this, the Nine Hells Asura Emperor's violent killing intent finally began to recede. He coldly glared at Empress Baeksu, his voice icy. "Well said. Only by dying at your hands does it hold meaning." I will make you flay him alive with your own hands, then chop you to pieces as well, making both of you wretched whores pay the price you deserve." Empress Baeksu bit her red lips lightly, lowering her head without a word. It seemed that at this stage, no matter what she said, it would be useless. Tian shook the primordial heaven, imprisoning gourd in her hand, proudly declaring, "Let me take him in." This is Fang Chen's supreme treasure. Being trapped inside his own magical artifact will surely make him feel utterly humiliated. The Nine Hells Asura Emperor nodded. He had always doted on this youngest daughter, who resembled him the most. Tianj immediately aimed the gourd at Fang Chen with a gleeful smile, mocking, "You've used this gourd to capture quite a few powerhouses. Surely you never imagined that one day you'd be taken in yourself." Fang Chen's eyes flickered rapidly. Since he had failed to obtain the Nine Hells Asura Emperor's true name, he now had only one path left. That was to release the great sage of the Phoenix Court. In his mind, he rapidly calculated the feasibility of this method. First, cast the soul-shifting grand art to seize Tianj's body, regain control of the primordial heaven, imprisoning Gourd, then immediately target the Central Emperor, using death, to threaten him into activating all the Holy Realm formations. But the risks were immense. First, the Nine Hells Asura Emperor's power was far too transcendent. A single glance from him might halt all his actions. Second, the Central Emperor might not yield to the threat of death. Then only one final road remained. That was, right now, to immediately activate all the Dao slave tainted blood, unleashing an indiscriminate radiation attack. The Nine Hells Asura Emperor would absolutely dare not touch even a speck. He would surely retreat in a panic. Thus, the karmic threads binding Fang Chen would be corroded away, and he could regain his freedom. Immediately after, use the soul-shifting grand art to control Tianj and retake the primordial heaven, imprisoning Gourd. Then forcibly open the one void zone near the Imperial Court that he knew of, creating a chance for everyone to escape. This path was even more uncertain, because it would inevitably result in many casualties among their own people. But this was the only road he could take now. And it had to be executed immediately. Because Tianj had already made her move, she aimed the gourd's mouth at Fang Chen and shouted, "Fang Chen." A wisp of eerie yellow mist instantly flew out from the gourd's mouth, transforming into a long chain that tightly wrapped around Fang Chen. She only needed to utter one more word capture, and he would be completely under the gourd's control. Fang Chen also no longer hesitated. With a fierce mental command, all the Dao slave tainted blood in the heavenly thunder stone at his chest began to mobilize instantly. The moment it erupted, it would explode, spraying in all directions. But it was at that very instant. Tianj's eyes, originally carrying a smile, suddenly flashed with a sharp glint, and she abruptly shouted, "Dongfang Fengyan." She had actually changed the name at the last moment. The yellow mist chain that had been binding Fang Chen abruptly swerved, shifting like lightning onto the body of the Nine Hells Asura Emperor. Yes, it was the Nine Hells Asura Emperor. And his true name was Dongfang Fengyan, differing by only a single character from the false name he had used, Dongfang Xingyan. This sudden drastic turn caught everyone, including Fang Chen, completely off guard. The Nine Hells Asura Emperor watched the yellow chain coiling around him in utter disbelief, his pupils suddenly widening as he roared, "Tianj, what are you doing?" Tianj laughed darkly, a sound as eerie as a night owl. She stared at her own father and enunciated each word. "Didn't you always teach me to plan before acting, to be the Oriole, not the Mantis? Now, your daughter has finally played the role of the Oriole. Father, shouldn't you be proud of me?" Instantly, a deathly silence fell over the entire scene. All eyes were fixed on this female Asura who hadn't even reached the Asura King realm. In those gazes, there was shock and even more, a thread of horror that came from the bottom of their hearts. This woman's ambition was simply too great. Her scheming was so profound that it was not in the least inferior to that of her biological father, the Nine Hells Asura Emperor. Empress Baeksu was abruptly startled and cried out urgently, "Tianj, what do you think you're doing?" "He is your own biological father." Tianj shot her a cold glance and chuckled. True powerhouses have never been ruled by such burdensome things as emotions. Her voice was as cold as ice as she continued, just like when he was about to sacrifice the four of us earlier. Empress Baeksu said with deep sorrow, "Is the world really that important to you?" Tianj scoffed coldly and snapped, "Womanly compassion without top. Tier powerhouses like father to back us. Do you think the ancient giants would coexist peacefully with us? While we yearn to monopolize the southern celestial realm, do you think the ancient giants don't desire the same? Just stay put quietly. Once I rule the Dark Asura clan, I will still need trusted people to assist me." Her tone abruptly became murderous as she added, "If you dare oppose me, then don't blame me for sending you to the grave with this old thing." Empress Baeksu wanted to say something more, but Tianqin, who was beside her, yanked her back. Tianqin firmly pulled Empress Baeksu aside, her eyes filled with complex emotions. Tianj was practically a carbon copy of her father. Both of them treated their closest kin without the slightest trace of emotion. Then let them fight to the death, as long as mother isn't hurt. The Nine Hells Asura Emperor stared deeply at Tianji, his tone growing even colder. "You've been planning for this day all along, haven't you?" Tianji answered without hesitation, "Of course. My original plan was to first control a Saint Realm corpse as a puppet, then rule the Central Plains, and finally fight my way back to the Southern Heavenly Realm." She continued, a trace of regret in her voice. "Unfortunately, some mistakes occurred midway, so I had to temporarily lie low and wait for another chance. And now, this is a heaven-sent opportunity." The Nine Hells Asura Emperor asked expressionlessly, "And after you refine me into a puppet, what then?" "Do you think that without my deterrent presence, the Dark Asura clan will simply obey your commands?" Several Asura emperors present glared at Tianji with fury, immediately moving to stand beside the Nine Hells Asura Emperor and berating her harshly. "Tianji, you dare commit insubordination against your superior. Release His Excellency at once. If you let him go, we will plead for mercy on your behalf and spare your life. If you persist in your delusion and actually dare to kill His Excellency, then we will have no choice but to cleanse the clan ourselves." A cunning light flashed in Tianji's eyes as she countered. "Oh, is that so? But I'm afraid someone disagrees." "Zhua." Before the words had fully faded, a burly Asura figure suddenly appeared out of thin air beside Tianji. Above his head, 5 profound vortices swirled ominously, a clear sign that he was a mighty 5 Hells Asura Emperor. This man was the strongest Asura Emperor in the Dark Asura clan, second only to the 9 Hells Asura Emperor. At that moment, the 5 Hells Asura Emperor took a step forward and, facing Fang Chen's back, spoke loudly, "Lord Fengyun, forgive me, but I choose to support the 3rd Princess En leading the Dark Asura clan." The 9 Hells Asura Emperor was utterly shocked, dazed for a long moment before laughing bitterly to himself. "My most trusted confidant had already been bought off by my own dog." Her, he shifted his gaze to pin Tianji, his tone complex. "Tianji, my dear daughter, you've truly taken me by surprise." Tianji giggled, her face brimming with sly satisfaction. "Isn't this your own fault, father? To guard against the clan's Asura emperors threatening your position, you monopolized the vast majority of resources and prevented them from breaking through. As a result, among the dozen or so Asura emperors in the clan, apart from you reaching the 9 Hells realm, the highest among the rest is merely the 5 Hells." She paused, her words laced with sarcasm. "Even the ancient giants, such selfish, greedy creatures, still knew to share resources, which is why they produced 7 Sun, 6 Sun, and several 5 Sun-level powerhouses. I only promised him the cultivation resources he rightfully deserves. How could he not follow me with absolute loyalty?" The 5 Hells Asura Emperor clasped his hands behind his back, a faint smile on his face as he said slowly, "Lord Fengyun, as the saying goes, a wise bird chooses its perch. Under my assistance, the 3rd princess will surely lead the Dark Asura clan step by step to its zenith." Before his voice had died, he suddenly turned his head, his cold eyes darting like lightning to pierce the other Asura emperors, and roared, "What are you waiting for? Pay your respects to our new emperor of the Dark Asura clan immediately." The few Asura emperors hesitated briefly, then one after another left the side of the 9 Hells Asura Emperor and came before Tianji. They all knelt to the ground and shouted in unison, "We bow to your excellency, Tianji." Watching this scene, the 9 Hells Asura Emperor clenched his fists until his knuckles whitened, a surge of intense killing intent erupting from his eyes. So it turned out that the one who knew his weaknesses best was never some enemy, but those closest to him. And today, Tianji, whom he had personally raised, had precisely seized upon those weaknesses. The situation was lost. He was afraid he would not escape the sinister clutches of this dear daughter of his. The killing intent on his face gradually receded, finally returning to a calm expression. He spoke slowly, "After you kill me, how do you plan to handle the situation before you? The Central Emperor still controls 9 Saint Realm arrays. He will never allow the Southern Heavenly Realm to fall into your hands so easily. How will you deal with him?" Tianji chuckled dismissively. "Him? Just based on him." She shook her head and continued, "Father, you still don't understand the giants well enough. They are nothing but a group of dark creatures steeped in greed, tyranny, and savagery, sacrificing themselves to benefit others. That will never happen among them. As long as I don't kill him, he will absolutely never activate the Saint Realm Array. I'll simply imprison him, so he can't die, but also can't cause any trouble. The Nine Hells Asura Emperor felt a sudden realization, right? He had been misled by the Central Emperor's earlier resolute expression. Among the giant race, apart from the two exceptions Yan Luo Wang and Zai Jiang, no other giant would ever make such a self-sacrifice. In the end, it was his daughter who saw more clearly. A trace of genuine relief appeared on his face, and he asked, "Then how will you confront the Central Plains army and the giant emperor? Even if you trap me in the gourd, you can only refine me into a seed and control a single puppet. One puppet alone won't be enough to handle so many of them." Tianji smiled, slanting her gaze toward the distant imperial court. Has father forgotten? Trapped inside that Saint Realm Array right now is a ready-made Three Calamities Realm human expert. With her as a puppet, suppressing all current powerhouses will be easy, won't it? As for the Saint Realm Array, Tianji's smile shifted toward Fang Chen as she continued, "I'd like to borrow the array stone on your person. I trust you won't refuse. In return, I can allow those few deity transformation stage beauties who are close to you to leave here safely." A man like Fang Chen, who values love and loyalty so deeply. How could he possibly refuse such a condition? The look of relief on the Nine Hells Asura Emperor's face deepened, so his daughter had already thoroughly thought through the entire plan before making her move. Amid countless tangled threads of a complex situation, she had carved out a path of her own. He felt that his defeat at his daughter's hands today was no accident. Even if not today, given enough time, she would have eventually found an opportunity to eliminate him. With a long sigh, he asked, "So you kept me alive until now just for this?" As he spoke, he pulled out a spatial storage artifact from within his robes. This contained all the resources of the Dark Asura clan. It was precisely by controlling this item that he had been able to hold absolute sway over the entire clan. A bright gleam flashed in Tianji's eyes. "Even if you don't give it to me, it doesn't matter. I will naturally find a way to take it from the Hell Realm." The Nine Hells Asura Emperor smiled faintly and tucked the spatial storage artifact back into his sleeve. The meaning was clear. He wouldn't give it up. Tianji's expression darkened slightly, but she wasn't overly surprised. Had she been in that position, she wouldn't hand it over easily either. The Nine Hells Asura Emperor gazed at his daughter, whose apparent cultivation level was utterly unremarkable. "I should have realized it sooner. You all share my bloodline, yet your elder brother and sister soared in cultivation and reached the Asura King realm long ago. Only your cultivation has always stayed mediocre, barely improving. You deliberately suppressed your cultivation to make me completely drop my guard against you, didn't you? Honestly, if it had been Tian Jian holding the primordial heaven, imprisoned in gourd earlier, he would have been wary. But Tianji, who could have imagined that a mere daughter, possessing only the status of an ordinary Asura, would suddenly commit patricide at this most critical juncture? The coldness in Tianji's eyes deepened. Since she could no longer obtain the Dark Asura clan's resources, her last shred of patience had run out. She said icily, "It's time for you to go now, father." The Nine Hells Asura Emperor lifted his head to gaze at the sky, slowly closed his eyes, and a peaceful smile of liberation appeared on his lips. "Thank you, good daughter, for sending me off. Likewise, let me give you a parting gift." As his words faded, a spatial storage device flew out of his sleeve and floated before Tianj. At the same time, a pouch also flew to her. Tianj focused her eyes and saw that the storage device was inscribed with the 4 characters, Imperial Ambitions and Overlordship, presumably the command to open it. Before his death, the Nine Hells Asura Emperor had ultimately left all of the Dark Asura clan's resources to her. When Tianj swept her gaze inside the pouch, she was visibly moved. Inside were 10 angels with golden wings. These were the great angels of the northern celestial realm. Moreover, all of them had been tightly controlled by the Nine Hells Asura Emperor's causal threads, reduced to puppets that only followed orders. This is, Tianj asked in surprise. The Nine Hells Asura Emperor explained, "Last time when I threatened the northern celestial realm, they offered not only 10,000 ordinary angels, but among them were also 10 great angels." Tianj was even more astonished. How is that possible? No matter how foolish they are, they wouldn't offer great angels as tribute. Great angels were equivalent to human sages, or the giant emperors and Asura emperors of the southern celestial realm, and there were 10 of them. How many great angels did the northern celestial realm even have? Giving up so many at once was like cutting off their own arm. The Nine Hells Asura Emperor looked at Tianj, his gaze as if giving her one final lesson. Where there are people, there is intrigue. So it is in the central earth, in the southern celestial realm, and likewise in the northern celestial realm. The so-called tribute was merely the sacrificial lambs of internal angelic power struggles. A great angel with formidable methods, wishing to eliminate rivals without soiling his own feathers, seized the opportunity to send them over as tribute in a perfectly legitimate manner. Tianji's face showed sudden understanding. Fang Chen on the other side also instantly grasped the truth. Back when he had learned that the northern celestial realm, under the Dark Asura clan's intimidation, had offered 10,000 angels as tribute, he had cursed them as weak and incompetent. Looking back, it wasn't incompetence. It was because certain angels were too wicked. Just as there are compassionate sages in the central earth who protect half-giants, just as there are giants who sacrifice the people of 9 royal courts to awaken a ferocious beast, and just as Tianj is now committing patricide here, wherever there are interests, there will be endless contention. This knows no race nor world. Clutching the 2 items in her hands, Tianj looked at the 9 Hells Asura Emperor with a complex surge of emotion in her eyes. She couldn't help but ask herself, if she were the one betrayed by her closest kin, could she be as magnanimous as her father? Probably not. But since things had come to this point, she had no room for regret. She bent her knees and knelt heavily on the ground, kowtowing. Your daughter Tianj bows in gratitude for father's grace. I will not betray father's ambition. I shall rule both realms and lead the Dark Asura clan to new heights. The 9 Hells Asura Emperor nodded, closed his eyes again, his face full of satisfaction. Your father will await that day from the underworld. Tianj rose to her feet, her eyes hiding indescribable emotions, and said in a low voice, Tianj respectfully sends father on his way. Then she suddenly gripped the primordial even imprisoning gourd, and after a moment of silence, bit her tooth fiercely and shouted, contain. There was a loud whooshing sound of powerful air movement, and the long yellow chain dragged the 9 Hells Asura Emperor, instantly flying into the gourd. At the same time, the 5 Hells Asura Emperor and several other Asura Emperors immediately took positions on all sides, tightly guarding Tianj at the center. Seizing this opportunity, Tianj grabbed the gourd and shook it violently 3 times. Inside the gourd, there was a violent tremble, and then with a puff, it spat out a black seed. Within the seed was sealed a miniature figure of Dongfang Fengyan. The peerless overlord, the 9 Hells Asura Emperor, had thus utterly fallen. Tianj tightly clutched the seed and the primordial heaven, imprisoning gourd, forcibly suppressing the multitude of emotions in her heart, her gaze abruptly turning sharp. In a deep voice, she commanded, protect me, follow me to the imperial court. Next was the crucial step, to control the Phoenix Dynasty Grand Sage. With a sharp whoosh of wind, several Asura Emperors immediately escorted Tianj and teleported far away. Before leaving, Tianj suddenly grabbed Fang Chen, who was still tightly bound by layers of causal threads, and pulled him over. This man was also a crucial link. Without him to break this sacred realm formation, even if the Phoenix Dynasty Grand Sage were turned into a puppet, he would be utterly useless. The sages of the Central Earth and the giant emperors of the Southern Celestial Realm all turned pale with horror at the sight. They absolutely could not let Tianj succeed. As everyone was about to chase after her, Tianj had long been prepared. She suddenly clenched the seed tightly and shouted fiercely at the giant emperors, whoever comes after me first, I will use this method on them. The giant emperors, such utterly selfish beings, would never be the first bird to sacrifice themselves. They immediately retreated one after another. And facing the armies of the Central Earth, Tianj employed another sinister method, grabbing Fang Chen's neck tightly and saying coldly, if the Central Earth dares to pursue, I will kill Fang Chen at once. The sages of the Central Earth immediately hesitated, wary of harming the hostage. Reason told them that they should disregard Fang Chen's life or death, but emotionally, none could bear to watch him fall. In that split second while they were delayed, the Asura Emperors escorted Tianj and smoothly arrived before the Imperial Court formation. At that moment, the formation was in utter chaos. The ferocious beast at the Three Calamities realm had long since awakened and was relentlessly hunting the Phoenix Dynasty Grand Sage and the extraterrestrial sages trapped within. To be precise, the only survivors were the Phoenix Dynasty Grand Sage and the Silver Moon Great Venerable. The other 10 extraterrestrial sages had either been torn to pieces on the spot by the beast, or had been caught in the crossfire during the fierce battle between the beast and the Phoenix Dynasty Grand Sage, obliterated in both body and soul. Only the Silver Moon Great Venerable, under the Phoenix Dynasty Grand Sage protection, had managed to barely preserve his life for the time being. However, the Phoenix Dynasty Grand Sage clearly could not hold out much longer. The ferocious beast was exceedingly powerful and ruthless. The Phoenix Dynasty Grand Sage was gradually being overwhelmed. A gleam flashed in Tianji's eyes as she secretly waited for the perfect moment to strike. The time to act was still far off. She had to wait until the moment the Phoenix Dynasty Grand Sage's movements were completely restricted. Otherwise, the seed might not accurately hit its target. Before that, she needed to make preparations to break the formation. Fang Chen, quickly break this sacred realm formation. I have already agreed to release your beloved. She paused, then coldly added a restriction. However, only those at the deity transformation stage. As for those who have reached the sage realm, there is absolutely no way she would let them leave. Because, just like that Dongfang Fengyun before her, she aimed to dominate the entire Central Earth. Fang Chen gazed deeply at her and slowly asked, with everyone turning against you like this, is it truly worth it? Tianj snorted coldly and said indifferently, don't try to impose your Central Earth concepts of benevolence, righteousness, and shame upon our Dark Asura clan. Since we betrayed the Hell Realm 10,000 years ago, we have embarked on an irreversible path of no return. And we have even coexisted with those ferocious ancient giants for a myriad of years. To survive, there is only one path. That is, to strengthen ourselves by any means necessary. Whether as individuals or as an entire race, only by constantly growing stronger can we avoid becoming food on others' plates. My father was killed only because he was no longer capable of leading the Dark Asura clan forward. If one day I am likewise killed by my own people, it will only mean that I too am unfit, and I will blame no one. Hearing these words, a complex look quickly flashed in Fang Chen's eyes. Although the various factions of the Central Earth also contend against each other, the degree of cruelty is far less than the bone-chilling ruthlessness of the Hell Realm and the Southern Celestial Realm. What the Dark Asura clan experiences is the naked, unadorned law of nature. However, he felt not the slightest sympathy for this. Especially since this Tianj, like her father, coveted the annexation of the entire Central Earth. Fang Chen's expression turned indifferent, and he said calmly, unfortunately, your father will probably not live to see the day you lead your race to glory. Tianji's eyes narrowed abruptly, a sense of unease washing over her. Could it be that this Fang Chen still has some hidden trump card? She immediately shouted sharply, quick, knock him out. However, before the Asura Emperors could make a move, Fang Chen struck first. He chanted an incantation under his breath, and in the next instant, his consciousness became light and airy, suddenly detaching from his physical body and rushing straight toward Tianji. Tianji's consciousness was also pulled out of her body along with it. The two ethereal souls brushed past each other in midair. In the next moment, each crashed into the other's physical shell. Tianji instantly felt an unbearable heaviness. With her mere nascent soul-stage soul, how could she possibly control Fang Chen's divine transformation body that had endured the 3 declines of heaven and man? In her eyes were both unbearable pain and a bewildered confusion, as she had yet to grasp the situation, until she suddenly noticed the herself across from her, smiling. She frantically looked down at her own body and finally understood, exclaiming in shock, we've swapped bodies. The Tianji opposite was smiling at her, deliberately shaking the primordial sky, imprisoning gourd and the seed in hand as he said, returned to their rightful owner. No, I should thank you for ridding me of your father, that colossal threat. Before the words had even finished, taking advantage of the Asura Emperors still not grasping the situation, Tianji flew over to Fang Chen and without hesitation stuffed both treasures into the heavenly thunderstone. Tianji instantly realized Fang Chen's intention and hurriedly shouted, quick, stop him. However, at the very moment they touched, Fang Chen once again activated the soul transfer grand art, and both souls instantly returned to their respective bodies. Thus, this brief body swap swiftly came to an end. After regaining control of his body, Fang Chen immediately activated the Heart of Myriad Earths, and with the web of karma threads covering his body, vanished from where he stood. When he reappeared, he was already standing firmly amidst the Middle Earth army. Tianji's body also shuddered violently as her soul returned to its proper place. Though there was no physical damage from the trip back and forth, the all-important primordial skyam, prisoning gourd and primordial seed, had fallen into Fang Chen's hands. Third Princess, what just happened? The 5 Hells Asura Emperor asked, his face drastically changing. The other Asura Emperors also wore expressions of utter bewilderment. They had just watched helplessly as the 3rd Princess personally handed over those 2 critical trump card treasures to Fang Chen by force. Tianji's expression quickly darkened, and she shouted in a low voice, don't panic, victory is still in our hands. Even without the primordial seed, they still had a considerable chance of victory. She abruptly turned her gaze to the Central Emperor and declared loudly, "Let both sides temporarily cease hostilities, work together, and first repel the Middle Earth." The Central Emperor had already realized that Fang Chen had snatched the most important killer move of the Dark Shura clan, and a dense killing intent flashed in his eyes. But he forcibly suppressed this killing intent. Compared to the Shura clan, the Middle Earth before them was the true mortal enemy. "Let's deal with Middle Earth first, then turn around and clean up the Dark Shura clan."
Fine.
The two sides immediately agreed, merging their forces once more. The Giant Emperor, the Shura Emperors, plus those false sages, numbered a total of 16, while the Middle Earth side only had a mere 18. Moreover, the Nine Hells Asura Emperor, before dying, had left his daughter an extremely precious trump card. Tianji abruptly pulled out a pouch and poured out all the sealed archangels within. "Form up!" Tianji barked coldly, and the 10 archangels immediately obeyed, lining up on either side of her. With this, the Heavenly Realm side now had a full 26 powerhouses stationed. The Middle Earth side, however, had only 18. If the two sides clashed, it would still be a one-sided crushing situation. The sages of the Middle Earth had not yet recovered from the joy of Fang Chen's successful escape before their expressions all turned deeply solemn. "What should we do?" the Ice Realm sage asked, deeply anxious. Once the battle started, the Middle Earth side would inevitably face a one-sided slaughter. Everyone looked toward Jiyu and the ancient Zen Buddha, the two powerhouses of the two calamities realm. But the two of them, in unison, looked toward Fang Chen. Jiyu Demon Lord asked in a deep voice, "Boy, will we fight or flee? You decide." Fang Chen's eyes blazed with raging battle intent, and he said resolutely, "We shall not return until the giants are exterminated." Everyone immediately understood his meaning.
Fight.
Until the last giant is slain. Tianji let out a cold snort and shouted, utterly overestimating yourselves. 5 Hells Asura Emperor, protect me. Everyone else, press forward with all your might. Make sure to prioritize killing Fang Chen. That last sentence was truly unnecessary. Middle Earth had already faced desperate situations brought by the Nine Suns Giant Emperor and the Nine Hells Asura Emperor, yet both times, Fang Chen had forcefully turned the tables. Now, who would dare to continue letting him live? Be it the Asura Emperors, the Giant Emperors, or those false sages, all listed Fang Chen as the primary kill target. "I'll take him," the Central Emperor roared, thereby sounding the charge for the final decisive battle between the two sides. The Southern Heavenly Realm side made the first move, a full 26 emperors and false sages, surging toward Middle Earth with an overwhelming destructive might. And Middle Earth could only fight with their backs to the wall. The 18 sages had no choice but to fight to the death. Jiu Demon Lord wiped the dried, blackened blood from his face and laughed heartily. 18 versus 26. That's enough for a satisfying battle. However, just as they were about to join the fray, Fang Chen suddenly held a pouch and blocked everyone's path, the corner of his mouth curling into a meaningful smile as he slowly said, "Don't rush. I've also invited a contingent of heavenly soldiers and generals for you." Hearing this, the Middle Earth army all showed surprised expressions. And the Southern Heavenly Realm army, which had been charging fiercely, also suddenly halted, their faces showing deep wariness. Could this kid have prepared another huge surprise for them? Tianji also felt uneasy in her heart. She narrowed her eyes and stared intently at the pouch, saying, "Could it be that you also brought a group of sages with you?" "Impossible. Where would Middle Earth find extra sages?" Fang Chen said no more and abruptly opened the pouch. In an instant, a sky-piercing yin kai surged out like a flood breaking through a dam. One after another, figures emanating the powerful aura of Shura Emperors loomed indistinctly within the thick, impenetrable yin kai. Both male and female, a total of 11. At the front was a female Shura with a graceful figure, exquisitely beautiful features, yet her gaze was as tranquil as a deep, still lake. Tianji's pupils contracted to the extreme, and she cried out in disbelief, "Shura Emperors from the Hell Realm. This is absolutely impossible. Impossible. How can Middle Earth have so many Shura Emperors?" The sudden appearance of Hongxiu and the others far exceeded Tianji's understanding of Middle Earth and completely shattered her control. Unable to accept this fact, Tianji, both shocked and furious, demanded, "Fang Chen, how did you come to the Heavenly Realm?" You tearing open a world rift couldn't have made such a big commotion without my father and the 9 Suns giant emperor noticing. She couldn't fathom how Fang Chen could have infiltrated the heavenly realm without a sound. Why hadn't the 2 9th level emperors discovered it at all? To the point that Fang Chen had entered with such a number of Asura emperors. Fang Chen's expression remained indifferent, and he responded casually, "I came to the heavenly realm the same way you descended to Middle Earth." Upon hearing this, Tianji and the southern heavenly realm experts' pupils abruptly contracted. A term flashed simultaneously in their minds, the sky-connecting dark pillar. That was originally their weapon against Middle Earth, a nightmare for the people of Middle Earth. But today, it had become their own nightmare. 11 reinforcements capable of rewriting history had actually invaded the southern heavenly realm through their sky-connecting dark pillar. At the same time, a burst of exhilarated cheers erupted from the Middle Earth side. Sparkfire Venerable, you actually convinced the envoys of the Hell Realm to join the battle. Unbelievable, truly unbelievable. These 11 people had originally been brought as hostages by Huaxin. But they were not obedient to Middle Earth's every word, much less likely to risk their lives to invade the heavenly realm. Fang Chen had actually managed to persuade them. This pleasant surprise far exceeded the expectations of all Middle Earth's powerhouses. Fang Chen smiled faintly, then turned to the crowd and raised his voice. Correction, it's 28 against 26. Neither side has 3 Calamities Realm cultivators or 9th-level emperors we can fight without restraint. Hearing this, the Central Plains army was wildly heartened, their eyes blazing with ferocious killing intent. Heavenly Craftsman Sage hefted his quays, a world artifact Warhammer, spat heavily and grinned. Damn it, always outnumbered and on the back foot, I've been stifled to death. Finally, we can fight a proper, glorious battle. The Southern Heaven Realm army's momentum instantly faltered. Now the 2 sides were matched in strength. Tianji narrowed her eyes and shouted sternly, "Steady." We have 1-7, Sun Giant Emperor 1-5, Sun Giant Emperor 1-5, Sun Asura Emperor, and a 2 Calamity Sage at the elite level. We hold the advantage. Dragging this out, we will gradually gain the upper hand. The restless Southern Heaven Realm army slowly quieted down. It was true. The Central Plains sages present were only Jiyu and the ancient Zen Buddha Venerable, both at the 2 Calamities realm. In a prolonged battle, victory would surely be theirs. Having steadied morale, Tianji shouted, "We have no retreat, either they die, or we perish. Kill." The Southern Heaven Realm army charged forth at once. The Central Plains side, equally surging with spirit, met them head on. The 2 evenly matched forces of sages clashed instantly. Heaven and earth descended into chaos. Chains of law, threads of causality, and curse stains erupted in a riot of dangerously brilliant arcs. Sky and ground were bombarded into a tattered, hole-ridden ruin. The terrifying shockwaves surged outward in endless, rolling tides, sweeping relentlessly in all directions. Both sides combined, over 50 sage-level powerhouses fought to the death. The force of this battle had already surpassed that heaven-shaking clash from the Central Plains Golden Era 1,000 years ago. No, it was even fiercer than that battle. Because the 2 sides were perfectly matched, each desperate to slay the opposing sage first and seize the initiative. Thus, as soon as they struck, every blow was a razing, all-obliterating assault. Suddenly, a piercing, mournful scream tore through the sky. They saw a giant emperor, under the joint siege of Heavenly Craftsman Sage and the Fang Mountain first-class Pavilion Master, have his Tao body completely obliterated. His soul could not escape either, crushed jointly by the 2 powerhouses. The Southern Heaven Realm had lost a sage first. The 2 sages, now freed, instantly pounced on the nearest smaller battlefield, joining a Central Plains sage to besiege and kill an Asura Emperor. This sparked elated cheers from the Central Plains army, especially the sages from Heaven Province. They could no longer remain calm. Because Heavenly Craftsman Sage came from Divine Weapon Province, and the Nameless Sage came from Take in Grand Province. Heaven Province, once the center of the Central Plains, had yet achieved nothing. Thus, they fought with growing desperation, utterly refusing to lose out to the other provinces. Tianji watched all this, yet showed no panic. A sharp gleam flashed in her eyes as she proclaimed, "The first to slay a Central Plains sage shall be rewarded with a great angel puppet." This was a living great angel, and a puppet at that. Its value was countless times greater than a mere sage corpse. Whether inferior sages or giant emperors, they were instantly tempted. Even Cloud Crane Inferior Sage's eyes swirled with greed. He was just fretting over lacking a suitable vessel for possession. A ready-made Great Angel body delivered to him would be an excellent backup. If he truly couldn't find a complete human sage's Tao body, he would simply seize the Great Angel corpse. He narrowed his aged eyes, swiftly scanning the chaotic battlefield for a suitable target. Suddenly, he spotted a silver-haired maiden being battered by a Sun Giant Emperor, coughing blood and barely holding on. That maiden was an Asura Emperor, but the aura vortex above her head wasn't condensed enough. She looked newly broken through, her foundation still unstable. Cloud Crane Inferior Sage gave a sinister laugh. "You'll do." He produced that terrifyingly dangerous white bone cylinder, aimed it at the maiden, and blew sharply. But at the very moment the soul needle was about to leave his lips, a fishhook hooked his white bone cylinder with lightning speed. Cloud Crane Inferior Sage froze for an instant, quickly recognizing what it was. Last time Fang Chen escaped the Southern Heaven Realm, he had used that very fishhook to steal a pile of treasures, including the purple Crimson Princess. Fang Chen, Cloud Crane Inferior Sage, looked angrily along the line of the hook. There was only empty space where he looked. Fang Chen was concealed within that void. Realizing Fang Chen wanted to snatch his white bone cylinder, Cloud Crane frantically tried to store it back into his dimensional artifact. "Hand it over." Fang Chen flicked his fishing rod, forcibly yanking the white bone cylinder right out of Cloud Crane's grasp. "No." Cloud Crane Inferior Sage flew into a thunderous rage. That was his soul quaze, a world artifact, and even rarer, a soul quaze, a world artifact perfect for a soul, path cultivator. Searching all heavens and myriad realms, you'd be hard-pressed to find a second treasure so perfectly suited. He watched helplessly as the white bone cylinder was carried away by the hook, vanishing into that blank stretch of space, aching with heartbreak and fury. Among the 10 sinners of the Central Plains, why did Fang Chen single him out alone? But Cloud Crane Inferior Sage still had his wits. Without time for revenge, he decisively teleported and fled back to Azure Sky Inferior Sage's side. At his original spot, Fang Chen slowly materialized, holding a small vial of tainted blood. Had he been a moment later, Fang Chen would have drenched him with that polluted blood and killed him. "You dodged fast enough," Fang Chen snorted coldly. He had long known that once the battle erupted, this Cloud Crane Inferior Sage wouldn't stay honest. Moreover, holding a supremely dangerous white bone cylinder that specifically countered sage souls, how could Fang Chen ignore his presence? Thus, he had concealed himself and hidden his form, secretly keeping a tight watch on Cloud Crane. Sure enough, the wretch was again skulking about, planning to backstab someone. And his target was none other than Green Pearl. Fang Chen shot a glance at where Cloud Crane fled, no time to bother with him further. He re-stealthed at once, activated the heart of 10,000 Earths, and instantly teleported above the fight between Green Pearl and the Sun Giant Emperor. Fang Chen's face was ice, cold as he snarled, "Old wretch, bullying the weak, you're picking on my little wife." He clenched his fist, and a strand of hair, imbued with the law of death, appeared in his hand. Then he lashed it viciously toward the Sun Giant Emperor. The Sun Giant Emperor's senses were razor sharp. He immediately detected the looming peril. His forehead's twin suns spun their light, and his own shadow suddenly sprang to life, transforming into a sharp black arrow aimed at that strand of hair. Green Pearl, bloodied and battered, instantly realized someone was aiding her. Seizing the moment the Sun Giant Emperor was distracted, she decisively produced the Book of Life and Death and wrote with Asura power, "The Shadow Sun Giant Emperor of Southern Heaven Realm stumbles." The instant the line was written, an arcane force radiated from the ledger and seeped into the Sun Giant Emperor. A bizarre scene unfolded. The Sun Giant Emperor, fiercely countering the law of death, inexplicably slipped on the spot and crashed face first into the ground. Panic-stricken, he scrambled to his feet, desperate to flee. But the law of death had already descended. A scythe of black shadow flickered from the strand of hair. Before the Sun Giant Emperor could even react, the scythe pierced through his body at the soul level. A ghostly head tumbled out of him. The Sun Giant Emperor's eyes rolled back, dead on the spot. Fang Chen descended and landed before Green Pearl, revealing himself. Seeing her covered in blood, his heart ached. He immediately deployed his domain to help heal her wounds. Green Pearl was overjoyed and astonished. "Husband saved me." In such a chaotic battlefield, Fang Chen still kept constant watch over her safety. She was deeply grateful. In truth, Red Sleeve had also been keeping an eye on her from not far away. After all, if Green Pearl died, Red Sleeve herself would be implicated. Seeing Fang Chen always protecting Green Pearl, she finally relaxed, then turned her gaze to the chaotic war, her expression calm and collected, and began commanding the Asura Emperor. Roars with full focus. She raised a hand, her voice cool and decisive. Lied you, Asura Emperor. Your causality is countered by that hidden giant emperor. Immediately swap opponents with Ice Realm Sage. Black Dream Asura Emperor. Go full defense and hold back the 2 Prison Dark Asura Emperor. Yu Kai, Lin Yuan, join forces and blast that 1 Prison Asura Emperor to death. With innately extraordinary insight, she orchestrated deployments effortlessly. Under her central command, the Hell Realm's Asura Emperors rapidly gained the upper hand and soon succeeded in slaying a Dark Asura Emperor. The Southern Heaven Realm had lost another powerhouse. Yet, Tianji, commanding from afar, remained utterly fearless. She was watching the 7 extraterrestrial sages with keen interest. Compared to the desperate life and death struggle between the native sages of the Central Plains and the Asura kings of the Hell Realm, these 7 extraterrestrial sages were RLY holding back, using only 70 to 80% of their power. In every clash, there was a clear restraint. A hint of amusement curled at the corner of her lips, and she sneered coldly, a bunch of mercenaries driven by profit. If you want to crush the Central Plains, you are the key. Before the words had even faded, she suddenly shouted loudly, Army of the Southern Heaven Realm, heed my command. Prioritize the elimination of the 7 extraterrestrial sages. Kill 1 and be rewarded with 2 Archangel puppets.
What?
The extraterrestrial sages, who had already been harboring thoughts of self-preservation, paled, and their expressions drastically changed upon hearing this. What unsettled them even more was that the Asura kings, giant kings, and degenerate sages on several battlefields forcibly broke away from their respective opponents and teleported toward them in a sudden ambush. Originally, just facing their 7 opponents had already stretched them thin. Now, with a sudden assault from a group of powerhouses, they immediately ran into dire trouble.
Ah!
A shrill scream tore through the sky, and 1 extraterrestrial sage was simultaneously ambushed by 3 giant kings, Asura kings, and degenerate sages, obliterated on the spot, body and soul annihilated. Of the remaining 6 extraterrestrial sages, aside from the Heaven Poison Sage, who gritted his teeth and held his ground, the other 5 immediately lost their will to fight, turned around, and fled. With their departure, the combat power of the Central Plains side plummeted, from 28 instantly dropping to 22, while the Southern Heaven Realm still had as many as 24. The advantage between both sides was instantly reversed. That was not all. The sudden flight of the extraterrestrial sages also caused chaos on the Central Plains side. Little Buddha and Eastern Crescent Moon were simultaneously besieged by 2 Asura kings and giant kings, instantly plunging into a perilous situation. To make matters worse, the 7-day giant king blasted the 9 nether demon venerable flying 1,000 miles away, while 2 5-day giant kings and Asura kings tightly entangled Ed the ancient Zen Buddha venerable. Moreover, the Azure Sky degenerate sage, the foremost of the 10 sinners of the Central Plains, with the supreme power of the 2 calamities realm, fiercely shattered the Tao body of the Samsara sage. The tide of battle turned drastically. Fang Chen's brow furrowed deeply. He decisively took out the primordial seed. His gaze locked onto the Azure Sky degenerate sage from afar. The Azure Sky degenerate sage, now freed up, had become the greatest threat on the battlefield. Whomever he set his sights on was doomed to die. Only by containing him could the situation improve. Looking at the primordial seed in his hand, Fang Chen's eyes flashed with cold light as he muttered to himself, "It's time to settle the score." With a thought, his figure vanished from the spot. Tianj, with hands clasped behind her back, surveyed the whole situation, a slight smile curling at the corner of her mouth. The overall situation is decided. Fang Chen, it's a pity, but the Central Plains is going to lose. The Central Emperor also let out a long, murky breath. He, too, was now free. It was time to have a good game with the sages of the Central Plains. He narrowed his eyes, revealing a ferocious expression, and exchanged a glance with the distant Azure Sky Degenerate Sage before speaking coldly. Azure Sky Degenerate Sage, now is the time for you to reap resentment. After 1,000 years, you have once again caused the Central Plains to fall short at the critical moment, plunging them into a state of utter destruction. One cannot imagine how much the people of the Central Plains will hate you. Absorb their resentment, and it will be difficult for you not to break through. The Azure Sky Degenerate Sage also smiled. He slowly raised the moonlight longsword in his hand. The cold blade reflected his aged face, distorting it into a hazy, twisted visage. The Central Emperor is correct. All of you, heed my command. As the leader of the 10 sinners of the Central Plains, his authority was unquestionable. The degenerate sages cast their gazes over, awaiting the order from their chief. The Azure Sky, degenerate sage, waved his sword lightly and said calmly, "Kill the giant kings and Asura kings."
What?
The Central Emperor stared fixedly at the Azure Sky degenerate sage, momentarily stunned. He thought he must have misheard. The other degenerate sages also looked over in shock, unable to believe the command they had just heard. Tianj too whipped her head around, a look of alarm on her face. Even the powerhouses of the Central Plains wore expressions of utter disbelief. Only Hanxiu remained calm, letting out a soft sigh and murmuring, "The Southern Heaven Realm has finally reaped what it sowed." Perhaps from the perspective of the Central Plains and the Southern Heaven Realm, the betrayal of the 10 sinners of the Central Plains was extremely abrupt. But in the eyes of the beings of the Hell Realm, it was completely expected. Because not long ago, in the Great War with the Ancient Giants, the Hell Realm had paid a huge price to enlist the help of the 10 sinners of the Central Plains. But just when the Hell Realm had gained the upper hand and victory was in sight, the 10 sinners of the Central Plains suddenly turned traitor and ambushed several Asura kings from behind, ultimately leading to the complete collapse of the Hell Realm's situation. Vast territories were trampled by the giants, and countless ordinary Asuras suffered terrible fates. The root of all this was the degenerate sage cultivation method that the giants had passed on to the 10 sinners of the Central Plains. To break through, they had to absorb resentment. And by helping the Hell Realm defeat the Eastern Heaven Realm, they would only receive the gratitude of the Hell Realm, gaining no resentment at all. Thus, they defected on the brink of battle, plunging the Hell Realm, which should have been victorious, into utter ruin, and incurring the resentment of all beings in the Hell Realm. Now, this very scene was playing out on the Southern Heaven Realm itself. The few degenerate sages were momentarily stunned, then quickly understood the intent of the Azure Sky degenerate sage. After a brief hesitation, they decisively launched deadly attacks against the surrounding Asura kings, giant kings, and archangel puppets. In an instant, one giant king was slain on the spot. The Central Emperor, both shocked and enraged, howled furiously, "Azure Sky, you seek death." The 10 traitors from the Central Plains, who had attached themselves to them for 1,000 years, had ultimately betrayed them. This was something no one had expected. The Azure Sky degenerate sage chuckled softly, sweeping his sleeve slightly, and a tangible wisp of resentment emanating from the Central Emperor's body became visible. He smiled sinisterly. The resentment of the ancient giants is indeed far purer than that of ordinary beings. Truly, your resentment is the finest nourishment for a Kai Fortune sage. I have waited far too long for this opportunity, hehe. The Central Emperor suppressed his killing intent, his face ashen. "Azure Sky, I'll give you one chance. Order your men to stop right now. If you want to absorb resentment, the Central Plains has countless beings for you to slaughter. You can have as much resentment energy as you want. As long as you help us win this battle, the entire Central Plains will be given to you." The Azure Sky degenerate sage laughed hoarsely. How much resentment can slaughtering ordinary beings yield? What we want is the resentment of an entire world. Nothing would make the entire Southern Heaven Realm hate us more than causing its catastrophic defeat. So, we'll have to ask the giant kings to bear with it for a moment. Later, we will carry your head around the entire Southern Heaven Realm, letting all the giants know that it was because of our betrayal that the Southern Heaven Realm lost. With those words, the moonlight longsword in his hand slashed out icily toward the Central Emperor. The Central Emperor was enraged beyond measure and cursed, "You pack of ungrateful wolves that can never be tamed." He was both furious and hateful. What he hated was naturally their betrayal, and what angered him was that they had been in the Southern Heaven Realm for over 1,000 years, and could already be considered members of the Southern Heaven Realm. Even the Asura Saint and the Giant Saint could not eject them from the realm. Recruiting and accepting their surrender 1,000 years ago was simply inviting wolves into the house. The Azure Sky degenerate sage chuckled. "We even betrayed the Central Plains. You man-eating creatures think you can control us. Whether we can advance further depends entirely on you." One was utterly furious, the other laughing heartily, and in an instant they clashed fiercely. The other degenerate sages, their faces filled with greed, launched all-out counterattacks against the powerhouses of the Southern Heaven Realm. As a result, the Central Plains still had 21 sages, while the southern Heaven Realm was left with 17 giant kings, Asura kings, and archangels in total. In addition, there were 6 degenerate sages also attacking the southern Heaven Realm. This situation had completely turned one-sided. In just a moment, an archangel was slain. Subsequently, Asura kings and archangels were annihilated one after another, body and soul. As the battle neared its end, the giant kings, Asura kings, and archangels were completely surrounded. Tianj surveyed the scene, her expression composed. Only 3 giant kings remained. Only 5 Asura kings remained. And only 7 archangels remained. The situation was irretrievable. A faint trace of regret flickered in Tianj's heart. If her father were still here, he alone could have suppressed the entire battlefield. The timing to seize power had ultimately been chosen too early. A brief feeling of regret surged in her heart for a moment, and she quickly suppressed the chaotic emotions. Tianji raised her head once more, her expression resolute, and said in a deep voice, "Victory and defeat are common in warfare. I still possess the archangel left by my father. The former troops of the Asura Emperor. Rising again from the ashes, what difficulty is there in that?" She made her decision decisively, her gaze sweeping across the blood and fire behind her, and gave the order to retreat to her remaining forces. "Asura Emperors, heed my command. Follow me and withdraw from this southern Heaven Realm. Continuing to entangle would only add meaningless casualties here. Rather than squander our strength here in vain, it is better to preserve our remaining power and journey to the vast myriad heavens and 100 realms, to carve out new battlefields and opportunities." At these words, the Northern Snow Asura Empress, who had been struggling in agony at the side, instantly looked at Tianji with urgent eyes, her voice even trembling. "If you leave, what will become of our people? You must know, in the eastern part of the southern Heaven Realm, there still resides an entire tribe of the Dark Asura clan. If even their rulers all flee, will not those ordinary Dark Asura clansmen be utterly reduced to lambs awaiting slaughter, ending up in a brutal massacre?" Tianji merely swept a cold glance at her from the corner of her eye upon hearing this. There was not the slightest flicker of emotion on her face, and she uttered only a single indifferent sentence, "Who can still care about them?" Once her words fell, she turned to her mother and spoke with unquestionable resolve. "Mother, elder sister, and big brother, come with me. I will personally carve out a brand, New World, to serve as a new homeland for our Dark Asura clan." Tianjian, who had long been trembling with fear, hurriedly echoed in agreement, "Little sister, I'll go with you. If we don't leave now, are we to stay and await judgment from Central Earth?" Not far away, Tianqin gritted her silver teeth, her heart stirring greatly. Their defeat was already sealed. If they did not leave, the only outcome left was death at the hands of Central Earth. Having considered this, she could not help but urge, "Mother, let us go as well." Yet in the eyes of the Northern Snow Asura Empress, an unmistakable hint of reluctance flickered. She slowly surveyed the battlefield, now reduced to ruins, her gaze as if searching desperately among the crowd for the figure that should have been there. Her lips held a trace of bitter struggle, and after a long while, she spoke with difficulty, "You, go with them. Mother will stay." Tianqin understood her mother's thoughts with just one glance at her expression. Mother could not bear to watch the Dark Asura clan suffer slaughter, and intended to stay behind to plead with that man. Even if it meant sacrificing herself, she would not hesitate. At this thought, Tianqin's eyes reddened slightly, but without hesitation, she reached out both hands and tightly grasped the Northern Snow Asura Empress's arm, saying firmly, "I'll stay with you, Mother." After all, for her, the worst outcome had already been experienced long ago. It would merely be being captured once more by that fellow called Fang Chen. She had grown accustomed to it. Tianji looked at them deeply, her lips trembling slightly as if about to say something. But in the end she said nothing, only turned around resolutely and uttered a low shout, "We go." Just at the moment they were about to move, a chorus of cold sneers rang out sharply from the void, like the hooting of night owls. "You think you can leave?" Those several twisted sages actually split off multiple figures, carrying overwhelming ferocity, and brazenly attacked Tianji's party. From their stance, it was clear they intended to pin them down firmly on the spot. Tianji, however, appeared unhurried, calmly commanding, "Strike together, tear open the void for me." The void near the imperial court had long been reinforced by mighty beings. Ordinary Asura emperors would indeed struggle to shake it, but their advantage lay in numbers. Under the combined fierce assault of several Asura emperors and the Archangel, accompanied by a dull, deafening roar like tearing cloth, they actually forcibly tore open a rift in the void. Under their tight protection, Tianji's figure flickered, and like a swimming fish, she swiftly broke away from the battlefield and vanished into the void. Tianjian followed closely behind, panic, stricken like a stray dog, crossing the boundary between life and death in a single step. Only when his body was fully submerged in the void did his heart, strung to the breaking point, finally relax. He abruptly whipped his head around, his venomous eyes desperately searching behind him for something, and finally roared at the top of his lungs, "Tell that Fang for me. The day I step into the Emperor realm will be the day of his doom. Let him and his relatives, friends, and teachers cherish these few remaining days well." His hatred for Fang Chen had long since grown like poisonous vines, nourished for 10,000 years, deepening day by day and seeping into his marrow. But in the split second after his words fell, the response was an incomparably fierce purple sword, light that, without any warning, slashed out from the void behind him. Fang Chen had attacked. He had been waiting for this opportunity to eliminate future troubles. From the void came his cold, indifferent voice. "You were already running, yet you had to add that extra remark." His original primary target for pursuit had been Tianji, to completely remove this greatest threat. Who would have thought, before Tianji had even spoken of revenge, that Tianjian, that reckless fool, would spout one vicious remark after another? This youth possessed astonishing talent in cultivation, and the chance that he would successfully become an Asura Emperor was terrifyingly high. If he truly stepped into the Emperor realm as he wished, then returned to carry out revenge, how catastrophic would that harm be? Thus, in that instant, Fang Chen changed his mind instantly, and his killing blow targeted Tianjian directly. That purple sword could cut through anything. With such an abrupt sneak attack, Tianjian should have had no chance of survival. But a bizarre thing happened right under Fang Chen's nose. Tianjian actually dodged. The speed of his evasion was so fast that even Fang Chen could not clearly trace its path. One must know, at this moment Tianjian was drifting aimlessly with the chaotic currents of the void, essentially without any speed to speak of. Only when Tianjian's figure slowly materialized in the distant void did Fang Chen clearly see. Above his head floated an hourglass radiating an inexplicable glow. That was unmistakably the space-time hourglass. It was Tianjian who activated this treasure, accelerating the flow of time around him by tenfold, thus narrowly avoiding that fatal blow. "So, you actually still had a space-time hourglass hidden on you." Fang Chen's expression darkened. The two space-time hourglasses he once possessed had all been seized from Tianjian. Never expecting the kid had secretly kept one more. Tianjian's face was ashen, but he forced out a cold snort. Having narrowly escaped death, he showed no sign of restraint and instead mocked. "You want to kill me? Dream on." Fang Chen gazed at him calmly, his tone devoid of any emotion, yet as if stating an established fact. "Do you think you can live?" Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A series of piercing sonic booms followed closely from the rift of the southern heaven realm. Several figures of sages from the central earth had already stepped out of the southern heaven realm and chased directly into this void. The situation in the southern heaven realm was already settled. Even if these sages could not return due to crossing the realm barrier, it would not affect the overall situation in the slightest. The urgent task now was to wipe out these last remnants of the Asura. At the same time, two of the twisted sages split off, joining the pursuit with sinister grins. In barely an instant, they charged into the Asura emperors like tigers among sheep, and the scene instantly descended into utter chaos. The terrifying shockwaves of the sages transformed into countless destructive light blades, crisscrossing through the void, madly annihilating everything in all directions. Even amidst it, Tianjian could not withstand the pervasive, horrifying pressure. Greatly alarmed, he frantically activated the space-time hourglass above him once more, attempting the same trick to escape this desperate place. But this time, at the very moment he once again brought out the space-time hourglass. A golden fishing hook, as if appearing from nowhere, accurately and silently hooked onto that hourglass, then lightly lifted it. Tianjian felt his hand go empty. Whipping his head around, he saw not far away Fang Chen leisurely storing his space-time hourglass into a storage artifact. In that instant, shock and rage surged through him, his blood kai rushing to his crown. He could not contain himself and erupted into a thunderous, hoarse roar. Fang Chen. Before his furious roar had even faded, the dense wave of destructive shockwaves had already swept over his unprotected body like a violent storm. "No!" The Northern Snow Asura Empress, having witnessed this scene with her own eyes, let out a heart-rending cry of utmost despair. Her phoenix-like eyes widened to the extreme in an instant, tears bursting forth, the depths of her gaze filled with boundless grief and resolute determination. No matter how unruly and incorrigible Tianjian was, he was still the flesh and blood that had come from her own body. How could she truly be so heartless? In that moment, Fang Chen's heart silently let out a long sigh. In the end, it had still come to this. Tianjian had died by his hand from this day forward, and henceforth, between him and the Northern Snow Asura Empress, they would truly be irreconcilable mortal enemies. However, just when everyone thought Tianjian was doomed beyond a doubt, an utterly unexpected scene unfolded. All that was heard was a piercing shriek of agony. To their shock, a blood-soaked figure struggled to crawl out from the very center of the destructive shockwave. It was Tianjian. His torso was cracked, covered in wounds, but clenched tightly between his teeth was a healing treasure pill that radiated a hazy, precious glow. The Northern Snow Asura Empress's grief turned to joy as she cried out involuntarily, "Tianjian, run." Fang Chen's gaze abruptly turned icy. This fellow's life was simply too tenacious. But upon reflection, it made sense. After all, he was the son of the Nine Hells Asura Emperor. It was understandable that he carried a few life, saving trump cards on him. But all of this should come to an end here. Without another word, his figure shot out from the void and, amidst the chaos, charged once more to kill Tianjian. Who could have known just at this moment? On the shoulder of one degenerate sage, a sole entity stood with arms crossed, leisurely poised. It was precisely the degenerate sage, Yoon. His mocking gaze, like a cat sizing up its prey, swept back and forth between the Northern Snow Asura Empress and Tianjian. He licked his lips and let out a sinister, low chuckle. Heh, to make this most beautiful woman of the Southern Heaven realm hate me like this. That feeling must be quite pleasurable, don't you think? Before his words had even finished, the degenerate sage Yoon, with a wicked grin on his face, suddenly transformed into a dazzling beam of soul light. That beam shot straight toward the struggling, fleeing Tianjian like a death arrow loosed from a bowstring. Tianjian had just been rejoicing at having survived yet another calamity, muttering neurotically to himself, "I'm not dead, I'm not dead." "Ha ha ha, Fang Chen, I'll make you pay for today's debt with blood." At the very moment of his frenzied screaming, he suddenly became acutely aware of Yoon's malicious intent locking onto him. That glance sent his soul fleeing in terror, and he let out a heart-tearing cry for help. "Sister, sister." He called out madly for Tianj, but at this moment, Tianj was already caught in the chaotic battle and could barely fend for herself, let alone lend him a hand. Tianj merely cast him a contemptuous glance, her gaze as cold as if she were looking at a dead man, and said indifferently, "A fool like you, who fails at everything and only makes things worse, would be better off dead, saves me the trouble of being dragged down." If this moron hadn't been in such a hurry to spit venom and seek revenge on Fang Chen before fully escaping, how would he have needlessly brought this lethal disaster upon himself? Such a person is simply reaping what he sowed, utterly unworthy of sympathy. With no one coming to his aid, Tianjian's fate from here on was not hard to guess. Amidst Tianjian's screams, twisted by extreme terror, degenerate sage Yoon laughed coldly and with utmost cruelty pierced straight through his head and soul. The violent soul power instantly ground his spirit into pieces. Just as he had killed Ling Xuzi before, the degenerate sage Yoon effortlessly wiped out everything that was Tianjian without the slightest exertion. Tianjian's eyes suddenly rolled back, revealing a deathly, ghastly white. His body, like a limp stalk of aquatic grass, collapsed powerlessly and drifted slowly toward an unknown distance, carried by the formless, chaotic currents of the void. Tianjian, in the Northern Snow Asura Empress's eyes, heart, tearing hatred and madness erupted in an instant. Her beautiful eyes were now completely shot with blood and filled with murderous intent. Disregarding everything, she burst out of the void, pursuing and lunging at the degenerate sage Yoon like a madwoman. Fang Chen couldn't help but be momentarily stunned. He had imagined many ways Tianjian might die, but never had he thought that in the end he would fall at the hands of the 10 sins of the Central Plains. Perhaps this is for the best. He then put it out of his mind, merely shifting his gaze to lock coldly onto Tianj. He immediately donned the feathered cloak that could conceal him in the void, ready to enter the void and pursue her. On the other side, Tianj was by no means idle either. Gazing at the increasingly chaotic scene before her, she suddenly raised her arm. In her mind's command, the several archangel puppets that had been tightly guarding her side fearlessly threw themselves forward, charging at the enemy. "Let the puppets cover the retreat. All Asura Emperors, follow me." On Tianj's face, a rare trace of reluctance appeared. She actually intended to abandon these precious puppets in exchange for the safe withdrawal of the Asura Emperors. The remaining emperors, including the 5 Hells Asura Emperor, seized this slim chance created by the Archangel puppets desperately holding back the enemy and immediately fled the battlefield as if their lives depended on it. Third princess, where do we go now? The 5 Hells Asura Emperor wiped the blood from his face carelessly, staring at the boundless void before him, momentarily at a loss. Tianj's gaze was profound as she said in a deep voice, "The dark tide is about to strike, and when it does, all heavens and myriad realms will plunge into unprecedented chaos. What we must do is find an absolutely safe place to lie low. When the world descends into chaos, that will be the perfect moment for us to rise again." She paused, and her sharp gaze abruptly turned, falling directly toward the distant direction of the heavenly court. She declared decisively, "Go, we head to the heavenly court." Hearing this, the several Asura emperors no longer hesitated, immediately clustering tightly around Tianj and fleeing into the distance like a streak of light. Before departing, Tianj suddenly turned her head back, her gaze piercing through the layers of chaos to fix on Fang Chen with a deep, icy stare. She spoke slowly, her tone full of cold pride. "Remember this. This time I was defeated at the hands of the 10 sins of the Central Plains. When we meet again, you will not be so lucky." Fang Chen stood alone in the void, watching the direction they disappeared. In the end, he did not rashly pursue alone, lest he fall into an ambush. He merely stood quietly in place, watching this group of final natural enemies vanish completely from sight. Hearing the commotion behind him growing fainter, Fang Chen turned his head to look back. He saw that the several Archangel puppets had been successively blasted to pieces by the Central Plains sages. On the other side, 2 degenerate sages, together with Yun, were madly battling the Northern Snow Asura Empress. The Northern Snow Asura Empress was now like a crazed demon, willing to pay any price to slay Yun on the spot. Fang Chen frowned and couldn't help but ask in a deep voice, "Why do you want to kill him? What grudge do you have against him?" The Northern Snow Asura Empress burst out with a piercing shriek. "I could understand if someone from the Central Plains killed him. Even if Fang Chen killed him, I could understand. But that beast Yun dared to cruelly kill an innocent person just to earn a shred of my hatred. How can I tolerate that?" Upon hearing this, degenerate sage Yun sneered, his eyes full of greed and malice. "Killing him is nothing. Not only will I kill him, today I will also take you for myself." He licked his lips, his filthy words slithering out like a serpent's tongue. "The former most beautiful woman of the southern heaven realm, if she becomes a plaything beneath me, I imagine your clan will hate me even more, ha ha ha." No sooner had he spoken than his eyes flashed coldly, and he barked, "Now is the moment." It turned out that through his carefully calculated enticement, the 2 degenerate sages had already forced the Northern Snow Asura Empress to the edge of the battlefield. There was no better time to strike than now. The 2 degenerate sages instantly revealed ferocious grins, and in perfect sync, they simultaneously summoned their karmic sin divine steels, carrying boundless foul miasma, and mashed them fiercely towards the North Snow Asura Empress. Fang Chen's gaze darkened. "Yun, degenerate sage, you old beast." Without another word, he decisively summoned 9 long swords and instantly deployed the grand derivation sword formation. A world-shaking sword cry rang out as 1,000, Zhang, long 9, colored giant sword abruptly coalesced, transforming into the most supremely brilliant streak of sword kai between H. Even an earth with the force to cleave through nothingness, it stabbed forth fiercely. Sensing Fang Chen's bold attack, Yun, degenerate sage, not only showed no fear, but instead revealed a mocking sneer. "Heh, quite domineering, aren't you? What, you've had your fun, and won't let me have a little too?" Fang Chen's eyes were cold as ice as he spat out a few words, "Shameless old wretch." With power surging from his feet, he rode that dazzlingly brilliant 9-colored giant sword and blasted forward with fierce momentum. "HMPH, you dare attack in our presence, truly ignorant of the immensity of heaven and earth." One of the 2 degenerate sages immediately stepped forward, and his karmic sin, divine steel, erupted with colossal karmic sin. The black mist, as if from the 9 netherworld, swiftly coiled around the 1,000, Zhang 9-colored giant sword, its terrifying corrosive power crazily eroding it. The blade dimmed at a visible rate. The North Snow Asura Empress stood rooted to the spot, watching this scene as if doused by a bucket of ice-cold water. Only then did she realize that she had been completely blinded by hatred just now. With her cultivation sealed, how could she possibly fight the 2 degenerate sages? She had merely been barely treading through the void by relying on the formidable body of an Asura Empress. But now, not only had she fallen into a desperate predicament of being captured alive, she had also dragged Fang Chen into danger. When she saw the karmic sin continuously corroding the sword Kai, about to reveal Fang Chen hiding within, she gritted her teeth fiercely, a death wish hardening in her heart, and recklessly threw herself forward. She actually used her Asura Empress body to violently crash into that cluster of karmic sin, then desperately inhaled it into her own body. Fang Chen was momentarily stunned. This woman, has she gone mad? But on the battlefield, there was no room for a moment's hesitation. Seizing the instant when the karmic sin greatly diminished, a razor-sharp light burst from Fang Chen's eyes. He rode that Zheng giant sword and with all his might fiercely slashed at that degenerate sage. A scream rang out. That degenerate sage, along with his karmic sin divine steel, was blasted away like a cannonball, his mouth spraying sage blood without stop. Meanwhile, the North Snow Asura Empress's body plummeted straight down like a bird with broken wings. Her entire body was tightly entangled by karmic sin, her face filled with agony, her silver teeth clenched tightly, and her delicate body convulsed violently. Her soul was undergoing the merciless erosion of karmic sin. Fang Chen quickly flew forward and caught her in his arms, a surge of extremely complex emotions instantly welling up in his heart. He was, without a doubt, an enemy of the Dark Asura clan. Whether it was the Nine Hells Asura Emperor or the Heavenly Sword, though he had not slain them directly, they were inextricably linked to him. This foolish woman, when he was in peril, had been willing to save him at the cost of her own life. Was it worth it? Just then, the two degenerate sages quickly regrouped with Yoon, degenerate sage. A terrifying, killing intent surfaced on Yoon, degenerate sage's face as he shouted sternly, "Quick, let's join forces to kill this little beast first. He's too great a threat." The two degenerate sages deeply agreed. A mere third decline of heaven and man cultivation, yet he could unleash a sage, level strike. This was truly an unheard of monster. If he were to break through to sage, wouldn't that be disastrous? Killing intent surged violently in the two degenerate sages' eyes, and they were about to attack again when a sudden change occurred. The urgent sound of tearing through the void came from the distant nothingness. 4 figures were rushing over at astonishing speed. They were precisely the Outer Heaven sages who had been swept into the void alongside the Grand Libationer earlier. Now they all arrived at once, and without a word, attacked those two degenerate sages. The two's faces instantly paled. No longer caring about Fang Chen, they turned tail and ran. At the same time, a cold moonlit sword Kai suddenly slashed down between the two sides, blocking the 4 Outer Heaven sages' path of pursuit. It was Fang Chen, degenerate sage, flying into this void battlefield with 3 other degenerate sages. They joined forces with Yoon, degenerate sage, and the other 2, gathering together. Fang Chen, degenerate sage, casually swept his gaze over the Central Earth and Outer Heaven sages, and coldly said without turning his head, "Our objective is achieved. We're leaving." In the void, invisible to the naked eye, strands of pitch-black resentment power were flying out from countless corners of the Southern Heaven realm, pouring into their bodies. The degenerate sage, who had been previously injured by the Grand Derivation sword formation, was recovering at a rapid speed. As for the other degenerate sages, their karmic sin divine steels emitted urgent black light and rapidly solidified. The degenerate sages were instantly overjoyed beyond expectations. Such pure and refined resentment power, they had only enjoyed it when they betrayed the Central Earth. Just as Fang Chen, degenerate sage, had said, personal resentment was insignificant. Only the resentment of an entire world was a great tonic. With this resentment power, they had a great chance of breaking through to the two Calamity realm. Only Yoon, degenerate sage's face was full of unwillingness as he shouted sternly, "What about Fang Chen? Are we just going to leave him be? If he doesn't die, he will become our greatest scourge." The surrounding degenerate sages all had resentment power to boost their cultivation, except for him, who lacked a Tao body. Therefore, he was more unwilling than anyone else. Fang Chen, degenerate sage, glanced indifferently at Fang Chen and coldly refused. "Can't you see the situation clearly?" Fang Chen already had 4 Outer Heaven sages gathered around him, and those Central Earth sages, who were slaying the angel puppets, were about to disengage. Even more terrifyingly, within the Southern Heaven realm, several Central Earth sages were eyeing this place like tigers watching their prey. If they dared to attack Fang Chen, those sages would immediately step into the void to join the hunt. If they didn't leave now, they few degenerate sages would all be finished here today. Yoon, degenerate sage, clenched his fists tightly, turned his head, and glared venomously at Fang Chen, gnashing his teeth. "Fang Chen, The mountain may not turn, but the river wins. We will meet again. Panting heavily, he uttered the most sinister curse. I, Yoon, never suffer losses. You seized my herb garden. I will make you pay for a lifetime. So prepare to live the rest of your life in endless regret. Having said that, he let out a string of spined, chilling, cold laughter. The creepiness and insidiousness of that laughter, even a bystander would feel a bone-chilling sensation, as if being watched by a venomous snake in the dark. If even they felt this way, how much more so Fang Chen, the person involved? Tianji had already escaped, the danger still lurking. If this sinister, vicious, and extremely cruel Yoon, degenerate sage, also escaped, wouldn't that be terrible? You think? Fang Chen's eyes erupted with bone, piercing cold light as he enunciated each word. You yourself can escape. Among the Central Earth 10 sins, he could temporarily endure anyone else escaping. But this old beast, Yoon, degenerate sage, must die today. At any cost, he must kill him. Without hesitation, he turned and handed the injured North Snow Asura Empress to a female sage behind him. Then he activated the void feather garment on his back, his figure moving as fast as teleportation. Next, he cast the selfless dust purification art, and his entire person vanished without a trace into thin air. Alarm bells rang loudly in Yoon, degenerate sage's heart. His powerful soul swept out overwhelmingly, but could not detect the slightest trace of Fang Chen's existence. He let out a frightened cry and hurriedly shrank behind Qingshan degenerate sage, shouting anxiously, Qingshan, protect me. Qingshan degenerate sage narrowed his eyes and shouted coldly, force him to reveal himself. As he spoke, he fiercely swept the long sword in his hand towards the void, slashing out a long moonlit sword, Kai. The other 5 degenerate sages simultaneously attacked crazily in all directions. A full 6 degenerate sages attacked at once, their terrifying destructive fluctuations weaving into an airtight net. Even if Fang Chen could teleport, it would be difficult to evade. However, to the 6's great shock, in the vast surrounding void, there was still no sign of Fang Chen at all. Yoon, degenerate sage's heart was filled with shock and uncertainty as he tremblingly said, could he have fled? As soon as the words left his mouth, a voice that made the 6 degenerate sages' hairs stand on end actually rang out from right in their midst. I said, you can't escape. The 6's bodies shook violently. Almost without thinking, they turned around simultaneously and launched an earth-shattering strike towards the space behind them. Yoon, degenerate sage, was nearly scared. His heart would burst. But after regaining his composure, a ferocious grin immediately appeared on his face again. Truly a fool who doesn't know the difference between life and death. Coming right into our midst, isn't that just courting death? The combined bombardment of the 6 fallen sages struck that patch of void, shattering light and shadow, causing violent upheavals. Such force no creature in this world could withstand it, save those in the 3 calamities realm. But what was bizarre was that the terrifying strike was met with a jade bottle flying out in response. That jade bottle exploded instantly in the raging bombardment, and the black liquid inside scattered like death, dealing ink rain, splashing violently in all directions. Before the liquid even touched their bodies, the fallen sages' souls suffered severe corrosion, pain unbearable. It went without saying that if it truly made contact, they would instantly be reduced to ash and smoke. Qingshan fallen sage's pupils shrank to needle points. He bellowed, dodge. With several whoosh 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 sounds, all the fallen sages' faces changed to terror. They scattered in panic like homeless dogs, fleeing for their lives. Yoon, fallen sage, had also sensed danger. Hugging his storage artifact, he fled for his life. But before he could get more than a few steps, his soul trembled violently. A sensation of being locked on, by something extremely terrifying, wrapped around him like a cold, venomous serpent. Yoon, fallen sage, stiffly turned his head and saw Fang Chen standing in the void a short distance away. He wore the void feather garment, the space-time hourglass hovered above his head, and he held a bone cylinder in his mouth. Within that cylinder was a soul needle, gleaming with a terrifying light, radiating a divine might capable of erasing gods. That Fang Chen had evaded the combined attack of 6 fallen sages was due precisely to the miraculous power of the space-time hourglass. Tenfold time acceleration, paired with the elusive nature of the void feather garment, allowed him to stroll leisurely across the battlefield. Now chaos had erupted. A cold light flashed in Fang Chen's eyes. He had finally seized that fleeting opportunity. Yoon, fallen sage's pupils abruptly contracted. He knew better than anyone the fearsome might of that soul quaze, I-realm artifact. He glanced left and right, seeing everyone fleeing, none caring about his life or death. His heart sank to the bottom. He knew there was no chance of survival today. His aged face twisted, and he suddenly burst into heavenward laughter full of mockery and madness. Fang Chen. Why do you keep chasing me? There are so many 10 sins of Central Earth, and I'm not even the leader. Yet you hate me the most, always targeting me, traitor. Traitor. Back then, those sages who cursed us as the 10 sins of Central Earth, now that they've gone to the source of all evils, how many still see themselves as people of Central Earth? We betrayed for the sake of the fallen sage cultivation method. Didn't they also abandon Central Earth for the so-called Grand Era? What difference is there between them and us? Humans are creatures who live for themselves. Morality, bloodlines, kinship, ethnic groups, all are just masks we wear to adapt to our environment and gain more benefits. Look throughout human history. Thieves and whores sit in high halls praising saintly texts. Imperial bloodlines claiming the mandate of heaven slaughter each other. Those who raise the banner of national righteousness secretly collude with the enemy to enrich themselves and destroy the country. This is the truest face of our people. The reason we are labeled traitors is because we failed to become the victors like those in historical records. The winner is king, the loser is bandit. The victors write history. If we had won, the history books would not record the 10 sins of Central Earth, but the 10 heroes of Central Earth who resisted the ancient giants to the bitter end. Do you understand, Fang Chen? We are all the same. You, me, everyone. All selfish creatures. Don't talk to me about traitors. I simply lost. Fang Chen listened without moving, not once interrupting. His eyes revealed extreme contempt and coldness. At last, I understand why you traitors are most ruthless when killing your own kind. Because every single person who fights for Central Earth is like a mirror, reflecting your own hideous faces. Yoon, fallen sage, gave a disdainful sneer, opened his mouth to retort, but Fang Chen gave him no chance, cutting him off in a voice sharp as a blade. Do you remember that solitary human grand venerable on the southern heaven realm? Yoon, fallen sage, raised an eyebrow and snorted heavily from his nose. That old fool whose soul I extinguished. You want to say he was selfless, HMPH, nothing but a fraud. He just wanted to claim great merit alone, to exchange for heaven, shaking rewards. Fang Chen stared at him with utter disgust, his voice flat but full of power. He had no name. In the vast Central Earth, save for the Grand Libationer, almost no one knew who he was. Even less did anyone know that he had gone to the Southern Heaven Realm, that he had fought for Central Earth. No one even knew he died in the Heaven Realm. And there are many, many more martyrs like him. Where do you get the face to compare yourself to them, to think you are the same kind of person? Yoon, fallen sage, was stunned. That old man whose soul he had personally extinguished, Central Earth, had no one who knew him. Then what was he after? He died and nobody even knew. For a moment, Yoon, fallen sage, was plunged into deep confusion, his lifelong tenets shaken, and he murmured to himself, could there really be such people in this world? Fang Chen slowly raised the bone cylinder in his hand and said calmly, not only are there, but there are many. You cannot see the profound shock of the late nascent soul cultivators from Take, in Great Province, throwing themselves suicidally into the ancient giant battle formation. Nor can you see the greatness of the heaven, hearing Bodhisattva, who offered herself to demons to avert calamity for all living beings. Nor can you see the flash of humanity in the moment desireless venerable chose mutual destruction against the 5-star giant king. Yoon, fallen sage's aged face twitched slightly. Every deed Fang Chen recounted had occurred on battlefields beyond Hunyuan province. He was hearing of them for the first time. Among them were both the weak and the strong. Yet each one radiated a boundless radiance that he could hardly bear to look at directly. He suddenly remembered something. 1,000 years ago, when Betrothed Sword Sovereign summoned the 10 merit, deficient Grand Venerables to sacrifice the fortune of heaven and earth and bring them into sagehood, he had looked at him with such deep intensity. That gaze he still remembered vividly. Because it was the deepest gaze he had ever seen in his life. After that, no one else ever had such a gaze. He had thought it was just Betrothed Sword Sovereign's unfathomable depth. But now he suddenly realized Betrothed Sword Sovereign had already seen through his selfishness back then. So his heart was filled with worry. But in the end, Betrothed Sword Sovereign had not cut off his future. He still gave him a chance to become a man of boundless radiance. Yet he had been the first to betray, the first to sink into darkness. Thinking of this, he curled his lips in a self-mocking smile, his voice hoarse and bitter. He deserved to end up with his body dead and Tao extinguished. Even though he clearly saw I was no good, he still gave me a chance. Fang Chen, do it. I will never regret. With that, he closed his eyes and offered no further resistance. Fang Chen's eyes flashed with coldness, and he said in a deep voice, "I don't need your regret. Go to hell and repent." He blew through his mouth, and with a sharp whistle, the soul needle as fine as a hair shot from the bone cylinder, instantly piercing through Yun, fallen sage soul. His aged soul, body shattered abruptly, turning into countless fine motes of light, silently dissipating between heaven and earth, just like the soul of Link Xuzi that day. And so this prime instigator of the 10 sins of Central Earth, the chief culprit who had first betrayed Central Earth 1,000 years ago, finally met his end, body dead and Tao extinguished. The spatial storage artifact he had clutched to his chest lost its support and fell silently. Fang Chen caught it from afar with a grasp. The value of a fallen sage storage artifact, needless to say, was immense. He casually tucked it into his robes. When he looked up again at the remaining fallen sages, he saw they had already fled far into the distance and regrouped. Across the distant void, they silently watched the demise of Yun, fallen sage. Qingshan, fallen sage, gave Fang Chen a deep look, as if wanting to say something, but in the end he turned away wordlessly and stepped into the depths of the void. The other 5 fallen sages followed closely, their figures disappearing one after another into the void. Fang Chen silently withdrew his gaze. These fallen sages, he would kill them one by one. This was their fated destiny. At that moment, the uncontrolled archangel puppets had been successively subdued. Either their Tao bodies were shattered, or they were captured alive. The external threat had been eliminated. Next, it was time to make the final decision with the giants. The 10,000-year plague of Central Earth was finally coming to an end. Southern Heaven realm beside the Imperial Court. The Central Emperor and the last 2 giant emperors, backed by the Sacred Realms formation, fought like cornered beasts. Yet besieged by the 9 Nether Demon Venerable, the ancient Chan Buddha Venerable, and the other sages of Middle-earth, how much longer could they endure? Soon after, the 2 giant emperors were cut down in succession. The cursed solar wheel upon the Central Emperor's forehead had 5 of its 7 segments shattered, and his colossal body was riddled with 1,000 wounds. Torrents of blood, like waterfalls, cascaded from the enormous gashes on his body, pooling at his feet into a chilling crimson lake. He staggered against the Holy Realm's spell formation, his body trembling uncontrollably, clearly drained of all combat power. The ancient Chan Buddha Venerable raised a hand, signaling the others to cease their attacks. Chanting a Buddhist invocation, he said, "Sage heavenly poison, kindly prepare yourself. Middle-earth will compensate you." Without a word, Sage Heavenly Poison directly retrieved the sundial and solemnly declared, "Buddha Venerable is too polite. Since I was invited by young friend Fang, I will naturally give my all." He placed a finger on the sundial, activating it. With but a thought, he could unleash the temporal reversal. Thus, they could completely prevent the Central Emperor from acting in desperation, detonating his heart to activate the 9 great arrays. With all his routes of retreat severed, the 9 Nether Demon Venerable's eyes flared with killing intent. He growled, "Strike, capture him alive." Wait, leaning against the spell formation, the Central Emperor wiped the bloody froth oozing from the corner of his mouth and let out a low roar. The 9 Nether Demon Venerable snorted coldly. "Do you still think to beg for mercy?" The Central Emperor took a shuddering breath, painstakingly straightened his chest, and for the last time regarded the world with an emperor's arrogance. "Is there even such a thing as mercy between our 2 realms? I only want to tell you this. My Southern Heaven realm did not lose to you. We lost to Fang Chen. Without him, how could you even dream of striking back at my realm? You would have been ground to dust in the last war." His enormous vertical eye swept over the crowd, his face etched with utter unwillingness. The sages of Middle-earth remained impassive. None could erase Fang Chen's peerless, world-shaking merit. The 9 Nether Demon Venerable said coldly, "If you have nothing else to say, then submit and be captured." The Central Emperor pressed a heavy palm against his own chest, his gaze sweeping around like lightning. "Let Fang Chen come and face me. Once I have seen him, I will let you dispose of me as you please. There will be no need for the sundial." On the brink of death, he actually demanded to meet Fang Chen one final time. The 9 Nether Demon Venerable said warily, "Don't even think about it. Strike." A cornered beast will still struggle. What if he still hides some hidden trump card against Fang Chen? Wouldn't the loss then outweigh any gain? At that very instant, when a hair's breadth could tip the balance, Fang Chen flew back from the void and landed steadily beside the 9 Nether Demon Venerable.